After having broken through to the Xian-Qi layer, Lin Feng's purple spirit had also changed. It looked even more real than before. It looked like a real ferocious beast. After having broken through to the Xian-Qi layer, Lin Feng's purple spirit had also changed. It looked even more real than before. It looked like a real ferocious beast. After appearing, the spirit opened its gigantic mouth and stared at the people with its gigantic eyes. It looked bestial and terrifying. Arg! At that moment, the dragon had constricted Leng Yu's body and was staring at him with its ferocious eyes. Leng Yu felt a chill run through his body. He then shouted furiously and released a fierce blade energy which emitted a whistling sound as it sliced through the air. Leng Yu's body was just like a huge blade, slicing the purple dragon. "You still want to live?" said Lin Feng, sounding ice cold. He started rushing towards Leng Yu, who was constricted by the purple dragon. In Lin Feng's hand, there was still a black lotus. "Get away!" shouted Leng Yu furiously when he saw Lin Feng's black lotus. He knew how terrifying that black lotus was. If landed on his body, he would burn to death. However, at that moment, Lin Feng wasn't stopping at all. Initially, he didn't feel like killing Leng Yu, but Leng Yu tried to kill him, so of course, Lin Feng wasn't going to show any mercy. Lin Feng raised his hand and was moving nearer to Leng Yu. "Leng Yu is dead," thought the crowd when they saw Lin Feng's black lotus. These two both tried to kill Lin Feng, but in the end Leng Yu would be killed by Lin Feng. "Die," said Lin Feng evilly. "Would you dare?" At the moment when Lin Feng was about to kill Leng Yu, an extremely loud voice spread through the air. Then, an incredible blade energy filled the atmosphere and surrounded Lin Feng's body. Lin Feng had the feeling that he was inside a sea of blades. Behind him was another cultivator at the Xian-Qi layer, with a blade spirit. The terrifying blade energy was unleashed in an instant. Lin Feng jumped through the air, and at the same time, the light from a blade attack streaked through the sky and cut through the position where Lin Feng was just standing. "Die!" Another blade light streaked through the air and sliced through the purple spirit which was constricting Leng Yu's body. In a flash, the purple dragon roared and immediately after transformed into a countless number of purple snakes, which moved to Lin Feng's side. Lin Feng was standing in the air surrounded by a sea of purple snakes and looked down. The man with the blade was walking towards him. He raised his head and looked at Lin Feng. His blade energy had invaded the entire atmosphere. "We've already met," said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. "Indeed, we've met," said that person while staring at Lin Feng in the sky. He sounded as cold and detached as he looked at Lin Feng. That person was precisely the person who had appeared in Celestial River to save Leng Yu. He had even attacked Lin Feng with his blade before leaving. Lin Feng didn't know what status he had to bring Leng Yu to the Imperial Palace. "Officer, he has tricked you," said that person while looking at Shi Qiong. Shi Qiong was astonished. "Tricked by Lin Feng? What do you mean?" asked Shi Qiong while narrowing his eyes. "When he uses his fire black lotus, he puts all of his qi into it. When he used his black lotus a moment ago, his qi would have been completely used up and he should only have recovered a fraction of his qi in such a short period. Right now, the black lotus is just for show, it's a bluff, nothing more." That man was looking at Shi Qiong and said slowly, "Officer, he wouldn't be able to defeat you, therefore, he didn't want to fight against you either. He just put enough pressure on you so that you wouldn't fight." After hearing that, Shi Qiong frowned and glared at Lin Feng. "Impossible. Impossible." Shi Qiong's face turned deathly pale. He didn't feel excited at all after hearing that. It was the opposite. He couldn't stop shaking his head. Had he really been tricked by Lin Feng? Lin Feng clearly didn't have the strength to fight against him, but relying on his confidence and persuasion, he had managed to scare Shi Qiong away and crush his pride. How could Shi Qiong ever look people in the eyes again? But when thinking about it twice, maybe the man's words were true. Lin Feng only had the strength of the first Xian-Qi layer. Using such a monstrous black lotus definitely had side effects. Besides, Lin Feng must have been trying to scare him and impress everyone. Lin Feng hadn't revealed his true colors until now. Is that so? Shouted Shi Qiong towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked at Shi Qiong as if he wanted to laugh, as if the situation was amusing. Indeed, the man was right. He required the entirety of the pure qi within his body to transform his sun qi into grim fire and then condense the grim fire into a black lotus. A moment before, he had already used his black lotus once and it used an incredible amount of pure qi. Even though he had taken a pill and recovered from his injuries, his pure qi hadn't returned to normal in such a short space of time. Concerning the black lotus in his hand at that moment, it was just for show. It was basically impossible for him to create a real black lotus right after unleashing one. Lin Feng walked towards the man while narrowing his eyes. That the man's strength was weaker than that of Shi Qiong, but he had much more experience, which was obvious considering his age. Besides, he had been watching them since the beginning. Shi Qiong paid attention to Lin Feng's facial expression and his heart started pounding. The man was right. Lin Feng had clearly consumed too much of his qi. He couldn't condense a black lotus that would unleash its full power. He couldn't fight against Shi Qiong, but even when you consider all of this, Lin Feng only used his confidence and persuasion to scare Shi Qiong away from fighting. He had scared him and made him move out of the way. Shi Qiong looked pale and wanted to find a hole to crawl into. As far as he was concerned, all of this was becoming more humiliating for him the longer it continued. Officer, you are extremely young and have already broken through to the third Xian Qi layer. You have extremely high natural abilities. Since you want to achieve great things in your life, you must harden yourself and be as determined as ever. You can never allow yourself to stay down. You must welcome difficulty and break free from your mental chains that hold you back. You must have willpower. You need to be determined and tough. All officers must gain experience. It's only way for them to reach the heavens. After all, there is always someone stronger than you, said the man slowly while looking at Shi Qiong. Shi Qiong's soul was shaking as if he had just gained enlightenment. He finally understood what the man was telling him. Even though he continued to be knocked down by Lin Feng, he needed to view it as a challenge and get back up. It was a way for him to gain experience and strengthen his determination. Lin Feng was also looking at the man. That person used a blade. He was a middle-aged man and had already broken through to the second Xian Qi layer. He didn't have very high natural abilities, but his heart was like a blade, silent and determined. Thank you for your guidance, said Shi Qiong in a polite tone. His eyes weren't filled with hatred anymore at all. Instead his eyes were sparkling with enlightenment. In fact, everything in his life seemed to be happening for a reason. He had extremely high natural abilities and a powerful background. On the path of cultivation, he had never experienced extreme difficulties. Even the battles required for him to break through to the next cultivation layer were planned. Those people didn't fight with him to the death and made sure not to harm him. When you look at it from that aspect, Lin Yu was stronger than Shi Qiong. Lin Yu had gone through many difficulties and fought in a number of battles to the death. That's how he was able to break through to the Xian Qi layer in such a short time. Therefore, because of these factors, Shi Qiong had run away when faced with the threat of death. He was proud, arrogant, but he still lacked experience, real battle experience. Lin Feng only needed to release a slight pressure to scare him away. Shi Qiong was still very far from being able to achieve something like that. Young master, when you're mature, wherever you go, you will be able to adapt, said the man to Shi Qiong. This time, he wasn't calling him officer anymore, just, young master. From today, I, Shi Qiong, am leaving my function as an officer in the Imperial Guard, said Shi Qiong calmly. He used to be arrogant because of his station as an officer, but what was the point if it was just the title they feared and not him? Could he fight against Lin Feng that way? Shi Qiong turned around and looked at Lin Feng. What has started today is not over, we will meet again. When he finished talking, Shi Qiong started walking away. He was surprisingly leaving. He didn't pay attention to Lin Feng and the others, and he didn't even spare a glance at Duan Xin Yi. After what had just happened, he could no longer pursue her affection anyway, he wasn't able to protect her. Many people were astonished when they saw him leave. Then, the man also said, "We're leaving too." "All right," said Lin Yu while nodding. He glanced at Lin Feng, but then Lin Feng said in an ice-cold tone, "Leaving? I said it already, nobody will save you today." Huh, the crowd was stupefied. They raised their head and looked at Lin Feng. Was he really planning to kill Lin Yu? Was he even still able to kill Lin Yu? Lin Yu started shaking, the man was also looking at Lin Feng. Lin Yu started shaking, the man was also looking at Lin Feng. "You consumed so much of your qi already that it's impossible for you to condense another full-strength Black Lotus. You want to keep us here, but have you thought clearly about the consequences?" The man was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. Even though Lin Yu was in a critical position, the man on the other hand, had broken through to the second Xian Qi layer and it wouldn't be easy for Lin Feng to defeat him. "I admit that I used up most of my qi, I wouldn't be able to condense another powerful Black Lotus like a moment ago, but I still have the power to kill Lin Yu. Last time, you managed to stop me by attacking me with your blade, past mistakes cannot be repeated," said Lin Feng while staring at his interlocutor. Lin Feng slowly raised his which contained his Black Lotus and said, "Would you bet your life on it? Would you bet your life on it?" That question echoed through the silence of the atmosphere. The crowd looked at Lin Feng. He had confessed that he had used up the majority of his qi, but then told his interlocutor that he would kill Lin Yu anyway. He then dared to ask the man if he was willing to bet his life on the power of the Black Lotus. If he didn't intervene, Lin Yu would die. If he tried to stop Lin Feng, then the Black Lotus would be used against him. The man was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. Would he gamble with his life at stake? For instance, if Lin Feng was bluffing, then the man would have the opportunity to kill Lin Feng in his weakened state, but if Lin Feng's Black Lotus was still powerful enough to kill him, then the gamble would cost him his life. "I admit that you are incredibly gifted. I am thinking that we should put the past behind us and build a bridge of friendship. I could send you to a place where you will have incredible privileges. If you went there, nobody in Shuiyu would dare to bully you ever again." When the crowd heard the man, they were all stupefied. He wanted to send Lin Feng to such an incredible place. The crowd obviously understood what it meant and where that place was. It was a special place filled with countless incredible geniuses. But Lin Feng didn't feel that the proposition was interesting. Nobody would dare to bully him again. If Lin Feng wasn't mistaken, Shi Qiong and Lin Yu were also intending to go to that place. If Lin Feng was weaker, then Shi Qiong would still be able to bully him. However, if he was strong enough, would he need to rely on any external help to protect himself? Who would dare provoke him? As before, everything was always reliant on personal strength. The weak would inevitably be bullied by the strong, no matter where they were or what their status may be, whereas the strong could oppress and control the weak. Lin Feng was unrestrained, natural and carefree. He wanted to soar into the heavens and do whatever he wanted, then nobody would dare to humiliate him. But he also perfectly understood that the world was cruel. The only way to achieve what he wanted was to become incredibly strong, becoming stronger step by step until he reached the heavens. He longed to soar into the heavens more than anything else. He longed to be able to fly beyond the clouds and look down on the world from above. Just like an incredible hero, he wanted to be able to kill his enemies with a wave of his hand. That way, nobody would ever dare to bully him. If anybody dared, they would die. Those days, Lin Feng's strength was extremely far from soaring into the heavens, but at least he could already prevent a great number of people from humiliating him. In Celestial River, Lin Yu had been extremely arrogant and tried to kill him, and now, in the Imperial City, Lin Yu once again made an attempt to kill him. If Lin Feng didn't kill Lin Yu, his heart would never be peaceful. He had to kill Lin Yu so he could rest easy. "I'm sorry, I'm not interested," replied Lin Feng. He then summoned the purple dragon spirit again, and an incredible purple energy appeared around him. He looked like a ferocious beast. Lin Feng's refusal astonished the man. Lin Feng wasn't interested. It was the third time that he had ever heard of someone refusing to go to the Holy Land for cultivators. 18 years ago, two other people also refused an invitation. One was the genius Zhuge Wuqing, but the man didn't know name of the other person. All he knew was that cultivator had a dual spirit. Back then, the man was still young, he hadn't even broken through to the Xianqi layer at the time, and wasn't able to go to that place. Ever since he had access to that holy land, nobody had ever refused an invitation. Everybody wanted to get the chance to go there more than anything. Yet Lin Feng just refused. Not only did Lin Feng only take a second to decide, but he also started to focus on Len Yu again while ignoring the man. Lin Feng moved forward, his body was surrounded by his purple spirit, he raised his hand which contained the black lotus and walked towards Len Yu. Len Yu was shaking, he thought that he had managed to escape by the skin of his teeth, but in the end, Lin Feng was still going to kill him. Len Yu looked at the man as he was Len Yu's last hope, he only hoped that the man would be able to defeat Lin Feng. The man had told Len Yu that he was going to become a legendary cultivator in the future, how could his legend end here? He couldn't die. Lin Feng, are you sure? Do you know what you just refused? Besides, do you know whom you are trying to kill? Threatened the man while fixedly staring at Lin Feng. I don't know, all I know is that I will kill anyone who tries to kill me. Replied Lin Feng indifferently. Do you know the name of the Snow Dragon Guards, the protectors of Shuiyu? Shouted the man furiously when he saw that Lin Feng was refusing his offer. The man had shouted aggressively and loud enough to frighten anyone, including Lin Feng. Snow Dragon Guards. Lin Feng was astonished, he had never heard of them. He only knew that Lu Lan was the only person protecting Shuiyu for the last decade and in the end, he was sentenced to death for it. In Lin Feng's eyes, the Snow Dragon Guards were nothing but a joke. What Lin Feng didn't know was that the Snow Dragon Guards were also the most mysterious of all the armies. They were amongst the strongest soldiers in the entire country. The people who were able to become an officer of the Snow Dragon Guards was revered and respected. Len Yu is already set to join the Snow Dragon Guards in the future, if you kill him, you'd kill a recruit of the Snow Dragon Guards. Continued the man when he saw that Lin Feng stopped. Lin Feng had stopped in the air and was looking at him. His eyes sparkled and his lips moved as he then said, "What do the Snow Dragon Guards have to do with me?" Then, Lin Feng's purple spirit burst through the air and in a flash, it was already tightly wrapped around Len Yu. That move had shocked everybody. What did the Snow Dragon Guards have to do with Lin Feng? The purple dragon roared, deadly chi filled the air and the crowd saw spirits start to move. Len Yu's body was still tied by the purple dragon which lifted him into the air, he was completely unable to move. Lin Feng raised hand which was surrounded by black flames and attacked Len Yu with all his cruelty. Ah! A gut-wrenching scream of agony exploded in every direction and painfully pierced into everybody's ears. Black flames had engulfed Len Yu's body which burned every inch of his flesh. The purple spirit was still in the air, it was still tying Len Yu's body but at that moment, there was nothing remaining but ash. Len Yu was burnt alive, the only thing left of him was the gut-wrenching scream which was still echoing through the atmosphere. Lin Feng was standing there with his grim fire surrounding his hand, he looked cold and emotionless. Of course he didn't even feel a tinge of pity. He turned around and looked at the man once again. The man was also staring at him coldly. I already said, today, nobody will save him, you saved him once, I wouldn't let it happen twice. Said Lin Feng while looking at the man, I have already killed him, do you still want something? Do you still want something? Lin Feng asked the man because he was trying to stop him from killing Len Yu, but he still killed him, so what did the man want by staying? At that moment, in Lin Feng's hand, there was still a black lotus but it wasn't as black in color anymore, it didn't look as powerful as a moment before anymore. The man's facial expression changed a few times, Lin Feng was asking him what he wanted, what could he do? He had attached a great deal of importance to Len Yu for a long time, he had brought him to the imperial palace, Len Yu was destined to become a Snow Dragon Guard. However, Lin Feng hadn't shown the tiniest shred of mercy and burnt Lin Yu alive. The Snow Dragon Guards, the protectors of Shuiyu, what did they have to do with Lin Feng? The protectors of Shuiyu were under the control of the Duan clan, that's all. Lin Feng wasn't a fool, he wasn't going to become a servant of Shuiyu or for the imperial clan. You will regret what you did today, said the man while staring at Lin Feng for a while. He had killed a future member of the Snow Dragon Guards. Besides, he even offended Shi Qiong. Lin Feng would definitely have to pay the price for his actions. If you want to fight, I will fight, if you don't want to fight, scram already, said Lin Feng, who ignored the man's superfluous words. Lin Feng had heard the same idle threats from everyone he crossed. They always said that he would regret his actions, but in the end they were just words. He never felt the slightest regret as he was always acting in harmony with his principles. If he wanted to fight, then Lin Feng was willing to fight him. If he just wanted to run his mouth, the man should scram. If he wanted to fight, then Lin Feng was willing to fight him. If he just wanted to run his mouth, the man should scram. Lin Feng was standing in the air and looked at the man with a piercing look. If he had doubts about Lin Feng's strength, he could fight here and now. He could gamble and see if Lin Feng still had the strength to fight him. The man glanced at Lin Feng and immediately after glanced at Duan Xinyi. He immediately made a decision. No matter what the situation was, Lin Yu was already dead. He had been killed by Lin Feng and that couldn't be changed. If he fought and Lin Feng still had strength to fight, Lin Feng would definitely kill him. If Lin Feng didn't have the strength to fight anymore and was just bluffing, if he really consumed all of his qi, could the man even kill Lin Feng? Could he ignore Princess Duan Xinye's feelings and kill Lin Feng? He couldn't forget that Lin Feng was part of Duan Wuya's faction. If Shi Qiong was strong enough, he could have killed Lin Feng, but the man could not take the same action, otherwise, he would end up being punished. Therefore, he quickly decided that it would be best to leave. Lin Feng would regret it in the future. We will meet again, said the man to Lin Feng, sounding cold. Immediately after, his silhouette flickered and vanished without trace, which astonished the crowd. Shi Qiong, Lin Yu, and the man were three extremely strong cultivators of the Xianqi layer, and they all wanted to cripple Lin Feng's cultivation, and some even wanted to kill him, but the result was Shi Qiong and the man had escaped while Lin Yu was burnt alive. They had finally realized that the young man whom Duan Xinyi liked so much was more mysterious than they could imagine. His natural abilities were much more frightening than they had first thought. Lin Feng turned around and glanced at the crowd with an ice-cold glare. Immediately the people in the crowd felt their hearts start pounding. After that, the crowd quickly dispersed and left. Once the crowd was gone, Lin Feng floated down to the ground. He took a deep breath. He no longer had a sharp expression, he just looked exhausted. Exhausted. Lin Feng had pushed himself to the point of exhaustion. He had condensed his pure qi to unleash the full power of his Black Lotus twice. He almost no pure qi left. Lin Feng could barely raise his hand. If the man had attacked him, Lin Feng wouldn't have stood a chance. That man was much more terrifying than Lin Yu. Lin Feng, said Duan Xinyi while moving next to him. When she saw that Lin Feng looked deathly pale, she started to feel guilty. Lin Feng had ended up in this position because she selfishly wanted to see him again. Don't worry, I'm all right, said Lin Feng softly to Duan Xinyi, after which an adorable expression appeared on her face. She was hiding her sadness of not being able to marry him. No need to fly back, I will accompany you to the exit, said Duan Xinyi to Lin Feng. Lin Feng slightly nodded and said, all right, let's walk through the palace. The imperial palace was gigantic, it seemed like an endless landscape. There were 7,200 large residences, 3,600 dining halls, an innumerable amount of ordinary halls and people. There were even more than 4,000 mountains and 300 rivers within the territory of the palace. The imperial palace was like a small world within the world. Besides, considering all of this, the imperial palace was extremely calm and tranquil. It was surrounded by mountains and rivers, beautiful bridges were built over the lakes, the high mountains had rivers peacefully flowing down, every now and again there were people who could be seen taking a walk through the scenery. Of course, other roads also led to vast plains where Lin Feng could see people fighting. Some of these battles were arranged to test their strength, while others were actual dangerous battles. When the people saw Duan Xinyi, they were surprised. Duan Xinyi was surprisingly walking alone with a young man. Duan Xinyi looked soft and gentle, she looked like a young girl in love. This news would quickly spread through the imperial palace. Lin Feng was also casually looking around. Lin Feng, can you see over there? It's called Wuya Mountain, that is where my brother Wuya lives. At that moment, Duan Xinyi was pointing at a distant mountain, the landscape was breathtaking. The foot of the mountain was emerald green and rivers were twisting through the lush greenery, it was extremely beautiful. Besides, on the tip of the mountain, there was a small palace. On the edge of the palace, there was a large waterfall flowing from the mountain to the river below. Such beautiful scenery. Lin Feng sighed in amazement. Lin Feng had just thought that everything would be gigantic and imposing in the imperial palace, but while walking through the different places, he understood the unique beauty and magnificence that it held. Living there was indeed something marvelous, especially in the locations where Duan Wuya and Duan Xinyi lived. The places where they lived were breathtakingly beautiful and tranquil. Duan Wuya lived in a breathtaking mountain scenery while Duan Xinyi lived in a tranquil forest with a stream. It is great indeed, but I will not get to see it in the future, said Duan Xinyi, who sounded a bit sad, but then immediately her sadness turned into a smile. Did such scenery really matter? The most important thing was that she would get to be with Lin Feng. At that moment, Duan Xinyi felt a hand next to hers. Lin Feng started to hold her hand with his warm and gentle hand. Duan Xinyi shivered and looked at Lin Feng. He was looking at her with a resplendent smile on his face. When Lin Feng had arrived in Yangzhou City, he saw that these people had crushed Lu Tsanglan and Lin Feng's statues and killed the Qi Xie soldier that were on guard. They were extremely cold-blooded and savage. They said that if Lin Feng wanted his revenge, he could find them in the imperial city. Lin Feng could still remember his name, Ling Tian. Huh? Ling Tian noticed Lin Feng's cold glare and felt a cold chill of killing intent. Ling Tian frowned hideously when he noticed this. Ling Tian was sure that he had never seen Lin Feng, but he looked extremely familiar. He had long forgotten about the statues and the slaughter of some insignificant guards. Ling Tian, what's wrong? At that moment, in the sky above the waterfall there was soft and gentle voice. Immediately after, Duan Wuya appeared to their side and saw the two silhouettes in the distance. Surprisingly, it was his sister Duan Xinyi and Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng and Ling Tian didn't look like they were on good terms. Your Highness, who are those two people over there? Asked Ling Tian to Duan Wuya. Duan Xinyi was a graceful, elegant and gorgeous young woman. He wanted to know who she was. Also, Lin Feng was looking at him in an extremely cold way and was surprisingly releasing killing intent with his glare. Ling Tian also wanted to know who he was and why he recognized him. Your Highness, who are those two people over there? Asked Ling Tian to Duan Wuya. Duan Xinyi was a graceful, elegant and gorgeous young woman. He wanted to know who she was. Also, Lin Feng was looking at him in an extremely cold way and was surprisingly releasing killing intent with his glare. Ling Tian also wanted to know who he was and why he recognized him. The young woman is my sister, Duan Xinyi, said Duan Wuya, which surprised Ling Tian. Her Majesty the Princess. No wonder that she looked so elegant, graceful and beautiful. I already heard that the princess was extremely beautiful, but this exceeds my imagination. She's extraordinarily beautiful, said Ling Tian, who revealed the thoughts in his mind. Duan Xinyi's beauty profoundly affected him. It's just. Who's that person with her? I don't know him. said Ling Tian while looking at Duan Wuya. Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi were walking hand in hand together, and their silhouettes were becoming clearer as they moved closer. Ling Tian had the feeling that he knew Lin Feng, and his intuition was growing stronger. He had never seen Lin Feng but still had a very familiar impression. Am I imagining things? Thought Ling Tian, but immediately after, he refuted this idea. As a cultivator, his senses were extremely acute, especially after he broke through to the Xianqi layer. He couldn't be wrong. He is, said Duan Wuya, who initially wanted to speak. We already encountered each other, said a voice suddenly interrupting Duan Wuya. Ling Tian saw that Lin Feng was fixedly staring at him. Lin Feng's eyes looked as cold. Lin Feng was able to hear what Duan Wuya and Ling Tian were saying from so far in the distance. You seem extremely familiar, said Ling Tian while looking at Lin Feng, and then added, but please forgive me, I can't remember where I have met your excellency in the past. As expected, he can't recognize me, thought Lin Feng. Ling Tian didn't remember him. In Yangzhou City, he had destroyed the statues. Lin Feng didn't care about that. What he cared about was the dozens of lives that had been lost because of Ling Tian's arrogance. These soldiers were all killed because someone wanted to pick a fight with Lin Feng. You've never seen me face to face, it's also the first time that we have met in person, but I could never forget you. Lin Feng's voice was ice cold, and he then said, the place we encountered each other, it was in Yangzhou City. Yangzhou City. Ling Tian frowned. Yangzhou City was only a small city. He didn't remember much about it. He only knew one person that was associated with it. It's you. Ling Tian was stupefied and then looked at Lin Feng in a cold way. He remembered the name on the statue, Lin Feng. It seems like you remember me now, said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. In the Imperial Palace, he had seen Leng Yu, and now he even encountered Ling Tian. However, he was within Duan Wuya's palace. The Imperial Palace was a complex place. Ling Tian, Lin Feng, it seems like you know each other. You don't need me to introduce you then, said Duan Wuya when he saw Lin Feng and Ling Tian were furiously glaring at each other. He couldn't help but speak in a gentle voice and smile. He wanted to soften the atmosphere. But they were already enemies. Could a few simple words possibly change the situation? Of course, it was impossible, especially since Lin Feng and Ling Tian's conflict was based on blood. A few dozen soldiers had lost their lives. Could Lin Feng just forget that? The two of them were aggressively staring at each other, like predators. The young girl on Ling Tian's side was looking at Lin Feng as well. It seemed like that Marquis of Yangzhou City wasn't as simple as she believed. Surprisingly, he was with the princess. It also seemed like Duan Wuya was extremely friendly with him as well. Initially, she thought that Duan Wuya was just the person who granted Lin Feng with the title of Marquis. She didn't think that they had a relationship. But Lin Feng probably couldn't be compared to Ling Tian. She knew how gifted and talented Ling Tian was. He was infinitely stronger than her. Now that they came to the Imperial City, everybody would know them sooner or later. The entire city would admire them. They were destined to become the names on everyone's lips. Xinyi, what are you and Lin Feng doing here? Asked Duan Wuya when he sensed that atmosphere was a bit strange. This time, he was talking to Duan Xinyi. Duan Xinyi looked at Duan Wuya and said, I'm sending Lin Feng off as it is his first time coming to the Imperial Palace. Alright, you should leave, said Duan Wuya in a soft and gentle tone. He didn't want Lin Feng to stay there. Apparently, there was a conflict between them, so Duan Wuya didn't want them to end up fighting each other. Duan Xinyi pulled on Lin Feng's hand. Lin Feng obviously understood what Duan Wuya meant as well. He was looking at Ling Tian. Lin Feng had already used up a lot of energy at that moment. Fighting right now wasn't an option. Besides, he couldn't afford to not give face to Duan Wuya. After all, Duan Wuya's strength and power were inconceivable for Lin Feng. Also, Duan Wuya was constantly helping Lin Feng and he appreciated their friendship. Duan Wuya was extremely friendly to Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't want to cause problems for him. Duan Wuya, as an enemy, would be terrifying. He was also Duan Xianye's brother. Lin Feng obviously didn't want to get into a conflict with him. Therefore, Lin Feng wouldn't fight Ling Tian there. I came to the Imperial City, said Lin Feng towards Ling Tian, which made Ling Tian narrow his eyes. He, of course, knew what Lin Feng meant. Back in Yangzhou City when he left, he said that if Lin Feng wanted revenge, he could come and look for him in the Imperial City, and Lin Feng had come. So what? Replied Ling Tian. He looked extremely proud and arrogant. Ling Tian had dared to destroy Lin Feng's statue and kill some of Lin Feng's army. He was fearless all the way. For him, Lin Feng was nothing, a simple marquis, nothing more. In front of him, these people he had killed weren't considered geniuses, so they were just insects, nobodies. You will pay for shedding the blood of my brothers, said Lin Feng, looking calm, but his insides were boiling. A few insects are dead, so what? They were useless, said Ling Tian with disdain. He was humiliating the guards he killed. A few insignificant insects, nothing more. How could Ling Tian care about them? Concerning your revenge, I said already, if you want to get it, come and find me, we will fight. Of course, I hope you're strong, because I will not show mercy to the weak, said Ling Tian in an extremely arrogant tone, looking down on Lin Feng. When Lin Feng was starting to gain his reputation, Ling Tian decided to go to Yangzhou City and destroy Lin Feng's statue. What gave a nobody like him the right to have his own statue? Besides, Lin Feng was with the elegant princess. Ling Tian hated Lin Feng even more from that moment, or more precisely, he was jealous. Be patient, said Lin Feng, and then started walking away. He was leaving with Duan Xianyi. Lin Feng and Duan Xianyi soon disappeared into the distance. Duan Wuya stayed behind with the two people. Duan Wuya was annoyed. How did he not have any information about Lin Feng and Ling Tian being enemies? I will wait, thought Ling Tian. Lin Feng was threatening him. It had been a long time since somebody had dared to threaten him. Since Lin Feng was making him wait, he would look forward to seeing what would happen. A trivial Qi Xie marquis, nothing more. He just cared about not making Duan Wuya lose face, otherwise he would have immediately attacked Lin Feng. Lin Feng, why are these people your enemies? Asked Duan Xianyi while walking slowly with him in the imperial palace. She couldn't help but ask, she was too curious. Initially, there was no enmity between us, we didn't even know each other. They didn't know me, but they came to Yangzhou City, destroyed the statues of Lu Zhanglan and me. If it had just been that, it would have been alright, but they also killed some of my personal soldiers and shouted a message to the entire city. Everybody was to tell me that if I wanted my revenge, I should come look for them in the Imperial City, explained Lin Feng slowly. He was still furious. Lin Feng would definitely avenge the Qi Xie soldiers that died. Since I have encountered him here, Ling Tian will definitely meet his end in the Imperial City, no matter what, even if he is good friends with the second prince. When he finished talking, a cold and ruthless light flashed in his eyes. He looked like a vicious murderer. In not even a year, Lin Feng had learnt many different skills and he understood a great deal more than in the past. In the Imperial City, the situation was becoming more turbulent. Even though Lin Feng didn't despise outstanding geniuses, he also had to go against the current sometimes. When Duan Xianyi saw that Lin Feng was releasing a cold energy, she held Lin Feng's hand even tighter and smiled to him in a gentle way. She looked at Lin Feng and said, in our world, many people will try and crush another person's pride by killing the people associated with them. They are extremely talented, monstrously strong, and think that they are at the top of the food chain. For them, the lives of a few normal people do not mean much. When Duan Xianyi saw that Lin Feng was releasing a cold energy, she held Lin Feng's hand even tighter and smiled to him in a gentle way. She looked at Lin Feng and said, In our world, many people will try and crush another person's pride by killing the people associated with them. They are extremely talented, monstrously strong, and think that they are at the top of the food chain. For them, the lives of a few normal people do not mean much. Duan Xinyi perfectly knew that Lin Feng was carefree, sometimes aggressive and cold. He showed no mercy to those he killed, but in his heart, he still had compassion. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so angry that a few soldiers had lost their lives. On the continent, there were many people who were kind-hearted, honest and exceptionally gifted. They didn't like killing people. However, once they experienced the coldness and cruelty of the world, these honest and kind-hearted young people had no choice but to take up the sword to kill. Lin Feng had also gone through a similar conflict in his heart. Heaven and earth were cruel, they treat all creatures as straw dogs. Even Lu Tsang had these feelings. But the most important thing is that your heart doesn't change. If your heart stays the same, my heart will forever be yours," said Duan Xinyi with a sweet smile on her face, as if she was trying to calm Lin Feng down. When Lin Feng saw Duan Xinyi's smile, he smiled softly. Actually, as a princess, Duan Xinyi was constantly witnessing people using plots and machinations against each other. But Duan Xinyi's smile was pure and soft because she didn't allow anything to pollute her heart. Lin Feng stretched his other hand and gently caressed her face, which made her blush. She had the feeling that her body was on fire, and she slowly lowered her head. "I will always stick to my principles," said Lin Feng slowly, as if he was declaring his intention. No matter how cold he was or how many people he killed, he always stuck to his principles. "Lin Feng, my brother's friends are extremely gifted, they all have extremely important backgrounds. Ling Tian and that young woman must be extraordinary people if they were able to draw my brother's attention. You have to be careful," said Duan Xinyi while raising her head. People who could come to Wuya's mountain were all exceptional individuals. "I understand," nodded Lin Feng. He wanted to kill Ling Tian, but it didn't mean that he was going to act carelessly. Ling Tian and that girl rode a Xian-level ferocious beast. They were arrogant and proud, their strength had to be incredible as well. Besides, they could curry favor from Duan Wuya, which proved to Lin Feng even more that they were not ordinary people. In order to kill them, Lin Feng still needed to become stronger. Duan Xinyi and Lin Feng continued to chat as they walked for a long time. Without even realizing it, they had already left the imperial palace. Around the imperial palace, there was a long river and a beautiful forest. In the middle, there was a large road. The people entering and leaving were very few. At the moment when Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi were leaving the imperial palace, they only saw a few silhouettes, and there was also a motionless carriage, as it had been waiting for someone. The few people present were all amazed when they saw Duan Xinyi. They all looked at her in an extremely respectful way and everyone bowed to her. They were also looking at Lin Feng with eyes filled with curiosity. Duan Xinyi didn't care about them wondering who Lin Feng was. But when Lin Feng and Duan Xinyi arrived next to the carriage, it was still motionless. There was only one person leaning against the side. They could see that person's back. He was carrying a sword. He looked sluggish and had his eyes closed. "You two are really slow," suddenly said a lazy-sounding voice. He slightly moved and then turned around. That young man looked at Duan Xinyi and Lin Feng. He had beautiful feminine eyes and was smiling indifferently. "When Ao Shui." Lin Feng was stupefied. But immediately after, the surprise disappeared from his face and he also smiled. "Long time no see." When Ao Shui smiled as well, and immediately after, he stood perfectly straight and released an extremely sharp energy which suddenly invaded the entire atmosphere. Lin Feng was surprised. Then the young man with his feminine beauty started moving towards Lin Feng with a strange expression on his face. Lin Feng was stupefied. Then Lin Feng's eyes flashed with a dangerous light as well, and he moved to intercept Wen Ao Shui. "Sword," whispered Wen Ao Shui. He raised his finger, which became as sharp as a sword as it started absorbing sword energy. It looked swift and fierce. "Sun," said Lin Feng, At the same time, he also stretched his finger out towards Wen Ao Shui. His finger contained his sword qi as well as his scorching sun qi. CRR, CRR. The terrifying energies were clashing in the air. Lin Feng and Wen Ao Shui's fingers collided and a cyclone of power burst out. Lin Feng's body was projected back 2 steps. While Wen Ao Shui was still standing in the same place, looking at Lin Feng. Xian Qi layer. Smiled Lin Feng. They hadn't met for a while and it seemed like Wen Ao Shui had also broken through to the Xian Qi layer, but Lin Feng wasn't surprised, it was actually very normal. At the time when he joined the Celestial Academy, Wen Ao Shui's cultivation level was already higher than Lin Feng's. Even when they joined the war, Wen Ao Shui's cultivation level remained higher than that of Lin Feng. In such a short time, Lin Feng had learnt the basics of alchemy and had learnt many skills such as the surplus souls technique, and on top of that he broke through to the Xian Qi layer. Wen Ao Shui had high natural abilities, so it was normal for him to eventually break through to the Xian Qi layer. Lin Feng could understand things better than most people because of his surplus souls and his earth fusion. Because of this he was stronger than most people. However, Lin Feng couldn't be described as an incredible and unparalleled genius yet. Wen Ao Shui, Shi Qiong, and even Lin Yu all were geniuses in their own right. They weren't any less gifted than Lin Feng. Of course, this was just in reference to cultivation abilities. In terms of fighting capacity and combat effectiveness, Lin Feng was much more advanced than most people. He had only broken through to the first Xian Qi layer but was able to kill cultivators at the second Xian Qi layer. Indeed, I am at the Xian Qi layer, but I just came back and heard that you are now the top-ranked disciple of the Celestial Academy. That doesn't make me feel relieved, but it doesn't matter. Why did you give me face a moment ago? Smiled Wen Ao Shui. A moment before, when both of them had displayed their respective strengths, he had already lost in power, but Lin Feng didn't use all of his strength. The scorching hot energy disappeared at the very last second, before it collided with Wen Ao Shui's finger. Then Lin Feng had meticulously moved backwards. All of this was to protect Wen Ao Shui's face. Were you waiting for me here? Asked Lin Feng while smiling. He was curious, why was Wen Ao Shui waiting there? They hadn't seen each other for a while, and surprisingly, when Ao Shui was there, with a carriage, it really seemed like he was waiting for Lin Feng. Indeed, I was waiting for you, said Wen Ao Shui while nodding, which surprised Lin Feng. How could Wen Ao Shui know that Lin Feng was in the Imperial Palace, and on top of that why was he waiting for him? Teacher told me to come here to wait for you. If Xin Yi is with you, nobody would cause you trouble in the Imperial Palace, but outside of it, you can rely on me to stop people causing trouble for you. Explained Wen Ao Shui while smiling at Lin Feng when he saw that he looked perplexed. Teacher. Lin Feng looked startled. Duan Xin Yi and Wen Ao Shui seemed to be really close. Lin Feng, Ao Shui is my fellow student, said Duan Xin Yi to Lin Feng while smiling, which surprised Lin Feng. He had finally understood, that's how it was. When Ao Shui and Duan Xin Yi were fellow students, Lin Feng obviously knew who their teacher was, Yan Yuping Sheng. But, this time our teacher made a mistake. Many people caused trouble for Lin Feng when he was in the Imperial Palace, said Duan Xin Yi while smiling wryly. Yan Yuping Sheng had planned everything to the last detail, but there were certain aspects which were overlooked. Caused trouble. Xin Yi, even though you were with him, some people dared to attack Lin Feng? Asked Wen Ao Shui with his beautiful eyes filled with confusion. Lin Feng came across Shi Qiong, said Duan Xin Yi. Shi Qiong. When Ao Shui's pupils shrank, no wonder. If Lin Feng had encountered Shi Qiong, it would go badly because he was madly in love with Duan Xin Yi. Shi Qiong wouldn't care about giving face to anybody. Shi Qiong didn't cause too much trouble for Lin Feng, did he? Asked Wen Ao Shui, puzzled. Considering Shi Qiong's temperament, he wouldn't let Lin Feng off. Duan Xin Yi shook her head and smiled, then she heard Lin Feng say slowly, we fought, nothing came of it. You fought? Asked Wen Ao Shui calmly while frowning. Lin Feng had said it in a very relaxed manner, but Shi Qiong was incredibly strong. Surprisingly, Lin Feng was saying that the two of them fought each other. Yes, after the fight, he left. Said Lin Feng as if it was absolutely normal. He then turned to Duan Xinyi. Yes, after the fight, he left. Said Lin Feng as if it was absolutely normal. He then turned to Duan Xinyi. Ao Shui and I will go together from here, you should head back. Alright. Said Duan Xinyi while nodding in a cute way, but she tightly gripped onto Lin Feng's hand. She felt reluctant to leave him. She said, be careful. Don't worry. Said Lin Feng while smiling in a tender way. Immediately after, their hands slowly separated from each other. Duan Xinyi then walked back while turning her head now and then, as if she was afraid that Lin Feng would run away and never come back. Lin Feng had made her a promise, but she was still scared to lose him, because she cared so much about him. She was terrified by the idea of losing him. Lin Feng was smiling the whole time. Only when Duan Xinyi's silhouette completely vanished from his view did Lin Feng turn his head around. At that moment, when Ao Shui's facial expression looked ambiguous, he had a smile yet not a smile on his face. They hadn't met for a very long time, but Lin Feng had already broken through to the Xianqi layer. He had become the top student of the Celestial Academy. He was worshipped and revered by many people, and he even obtained the princess heart. Lin Feng was really enjoying a good life recently. Why do we have a carriage? Asked Lin Feng, which made the ambiguous smile disappear from Wen Ao Shui's face. Lin Feng looked at the carriage. He wasn't a woman yet when Ao Shui had brought a carriage to pick him up. Who knows, you might have wanted to elope with the princess, so I brought a carriage. Said Wen Ao Shui while laughing, which made Lin Feng roll his eyes with exasperation. He ignored Wen Ao Shui and climbed onto the carriage. Wen Ao Shui sat in the front of urged on the horses with the whip as they started trotting slowly. Where were you all this time? Asked Lin Feng as he sat next to Wen Ao Shui on the front of the carriage. I was at the 9-Dragon Mountain chain, at the peak of Mount Sword. Said Wen Ao Shui. There, I closed my eyes for a while and managed to break through to the Xianqi layer. I was successful in my training. 9-Dragon Mountain chain. Mount Sword, whispered Lin Feng. In the east of the imperial city, there was a vast mountain range with many ferocious beasts. It was a bit like the Black Wind Mountain. It was an extremely large region, and on the other side of the mountain chain was a neighboring country. Lin Feng had also heard that the powerful Yu clan lived in a forest within that mountain chain. When Ao Shui had mentioned the Mount Sword, it was one of the high peaks in that mountain chain. Yes, practicing sword skills at Mount Sword is great. I improved so much on my path of sword cultivation. You should also go there when you have time. Explained Wen Ao Shui. In the imperial city, strong sword cultivators particularly liked to go to Mount Sword to practice their sword skills, but rumors said that it wasn't good to go there too often. For a sword cultivator, the best time to go was before breaking through to the next layer or when one was on the verge of understanding something new regarding swords. Going there too many times would have the opposite effect and cause one's path to become harder. Of course, that was just a rumor. Let's go then. Said Lin Feng suddenly, which shocked Wen Ao Shui. What, now? Asked Wen Ao Shui while glancing at Lin Feng with his beautiful eyes. Yes, now. Said Lin Feng while resolutely nodding his head. When Ao Shui was stupefied, he stared at Lin Feng and remained frozen in place, overcome with confusion. You're insane. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have told you. Said Wen Ao Shui upset. Immediately after, the horses were charging forth at full speed. The wheels of the carriage were rolling at incredible speeds across the ground. The carriage was moving towards the east at full speed. The imperial city was an incredibly gigantic place. When Ao Shui was driving the carriage at full speed through the imperial city, but they managed to arrive after only a day of travel. When Ao Shui stretched while looking at the gigantic mountain chain filled with ferocious beasts. When Ao Shui looked exhausted, not because of training hard but because he had been driving the carriage at full speed for an entire day. He was breathing deeply, he was really exhausted. When Ao Shui saw Lin Feng jump from the carriage and look at the mountain range with twinkling eyes, he looked excited. It was the first time that Lin Feng had gone to the Nine Dragon Mountain chain. It also had many ferocious beasts just like the Black Wind Mountain, but there were still some differences. In the Black Wind Mountain, the slopes were filled with trees, and their topography also differed because in the Black Wind Mountain, there weren't many precipices. Besides, the topography of the Nine Dragon Mountain chain was extreme. There were huge variations in altitude between the different mountains. However, they both contained terrifying ferocious beasts, therefore the thick qi from the beasts filled the atmosphere. Even though it was filled with ferocious beasts, there were many people who journeyed to that mountain. Ferocious beasts were very dangerous and their forests were extremely dangerous places. Hunting and fighting ferocious beasts were a great way to accumulate battle experience, so cultivators would constantly risk their lives by fighting against ferocious beasts. They hardened themselves and strengthened their determination by fighting against ferocious beasts. At the same time, in beast forests, cultivators could also find rare treasures. Therefore, practicing in a beast forest was extremely dangerous, but there were many people who went there anyway. "Where is Mount Sword?" asked Lin Feng. "Go straight for about 5 kilometers, you will see it," explained Ao Shui. Immediately after, he added, "I just came from there, so I won't be able to accompany you. We will have to part here." When he finished talking, he immediately turned around and jumped back onto the carriage. Then, he used his long whip to urge the horses on as the sound of the carriage departing filled the air. It wasn't long until he was gradually disappearing into the distance. Lin Feng watched when Ao Shui leave. What a likable person. He looked strange, feminine and handsome, but he acted natural, unrestrained and unruly. When Ao Shui was also extremely gifted. He was a man of unyielding character, but he wasn't reckless at all. He always stood head and shoulders above others. He wasn't scared that people wouldn't know how strong and prestigious he was. Very quickly, Lin Feng turned around and walked into the mountain range. He intended to practice and improve his level. After all, in the imperial city, Lin Feng had a lot of enemies. If he wanted to fight against people like Shi Qiong and if he wanted to kill Ling Tian, he only had his own strength to rely on. Therefore, when he heard Ao Shui say that this place was ideal to improve a cultivator's sword abilities, Lin Feng had immediately decided to come without the slightest degree of hesitation. Cultivation was something that had no set or defined end and could be practiced without end. Lin Feng was already able to carry out sword fusion, but he hadn't mastered it yet. He was far from it. Besides, there had to be much stronger dimensions than that on the path of the sword. It's just that Lin Feng hadn't uncovered them yet. The sun was shining upon the thick and dense forest. Only a few rays of light could pierce through the dense vegetation. Feng Ting was walking through the forest with the greatest of care. Around her were some guards from her clan to protect her. "Xiao, we're already about 5 kilometers inside the mountain. If we keep moving forwards, we might encounter some extremely strong Ling-level beasts. We have to be extremely careful," said an old man next to Feng Ting. "Yes, I know," said Feng Ting while nodding. Even though she was scared, she had to continue. Her father was sick and she needed to find some 9-sun grass. "Xiao, if you can't do it, let's give up. Your father will not blame you. Finding 9-sun grass is extremely difficult," said the old man while sighing. 9-sun grass contained an incredible amount of sun qi. It contained the incredible vitality of the sun. It only grew in places where pure qi was extremely dense. Only places which were connected to the qi veins of the earth could grow 9-sun grass. That kind of treasure was so precious that even if they found it, there was a good chance that it would get stolen by someone stronger. Feng Ting slightly shook her head. She would never give up. 9-sun grass. Precisely at that moment, Lin Feng was passing nearby and heard these 3 words which drew his attention. The grass was a Ling-level ingredient, it could heal someone's respiratory system and even strengthen it. It could increase the strength unceasingly. Besides, it was also one of the ingredients of divine water pills. Lin Feng hadn't forgotten that Yun Shi, who was frozen, needed 9 sun grass to keep living. Lin Feng frowned while looking at Feng Ting and the guards surrounding her. They seemed to take their function of protectors extremely seriously. There were some other people who were looking at that girl in an evil and perverted way, they harbored evil designs. That young girl looked lithe and graceful and had developed curves. She couldn't sense the looks from those evil people, but with Lin Feng's acute senses and experience, he easily noticed them. But Lin Feng was a stranger, would he be able to take care of her? He made a slight movement and instantly arrived by the girls' group, which surprised the guards, who then stared at him with murderous gazes. "Who are you?" asked the old guard who was in front of Feng Ting. He was of course very vigilant. In the 9-dragon mountain chain, a few extremely strong cultivators killed the weaker ones to steal their precious treasures. It was an extremely common phenomenon, therefore if anybody suddenly appeared before them, they would have to be extremely careful. "Do you know where to find 9 sun grass?" asked Lin Feng towards the girl. Feng Ting observed Lin Feng, he looked clean, mysterious and handsome. "No, I don't," said Feng Ting while shaking her head. She had come hoping to encounter it by luck. Lin Feng didn't add anything, he only wanted to know if they had information on the 9 sun grass. "Let's work together, how does that sound?" said Lin Feng after remaining silent for a moment. He wasn't familiar with this place. If he could really find some 9 sun grass and improve his sword skills, he would definitely spend some more time in the 9-dragon mountain chain helping with their search. "Let's work together, how does that sound?" said Lin Feng after remaining silent for a moment. He wasn't familiar with this place. If he could really find some 9 sun grass and improve his sword skills, he would definitely spend some more time in the 9-dragon mountain chain helping with their search. Such an opportunity was extremely rare. Feng Ting remained silent and ignored Lin Feng's question, and then Lin Feng heard the old man next to her say, "No need, sorry, we don't need each other. It would be best if we go our own ways." "Indeed, besides, why would you want to stay with us?" "Who are you?" said a guard sounding nervous. Lin Feng rolled his eyes and released a cold energy which astonished the crowd. They felt like they were going to freeze on the spot. "How cold?" They all quickly went silent. "Since that is the case, I will go," said Lin Feng while slightly shaking his head. If the young girl had agreed to stay with him, that would have been great for her. If Lin Feng was with her then she wouldn't be in danger, but she stayed silent. Lin Feng quickly continued on his way. Feng Ting's eyes twinkled, how straightforward. Such people were rare to find. Lin Feng had come and asked if she knew where to find 9 sun grass and on top of that had asked if he could go with them. Besides, he had remained absolutely unperturbed when they rejected his offer. Lin Feng continued walking forwards and suddenly accelerated, rushing deeper into the mountain. A wolf had noticed that some people had penetrated its territory and let out a low howl while running towards Lin Feng. Suddenly, the light from a sword glowed and the wolf's head was pierced as it fell onto the ground. It had become a corpse. Besides, Lin Feng's silhouette immediately vanished from that location. The wolf wasn't the only one to end up like that. After that, many ferocious beasts attacked Lin Feng, but it was all in vain. They didn't even manage to slow Lin Feng down. Lin Feng was streaking through the forest just like a meteor as he killed ferocious beasts. He looked majestic. After a short period of time, Lin Feng came out of the mysterious forest and stopped. In front of him there was a tall mountain peak. It was so high that it looked like it was a pillar that supported the sky. What amazed Lin Feng the most was that the mountain surprisingly looked like a sword. Its peak looked like the tip of a sword. It looked like it was cutting through the heavens. Mount Sword, it was a mountain chain of 9 sword-shaped mountains, that was Mount Sword. Lin Feng was stupefied, then his silhouette started flickering insanely towards a mountain peak facing the Nine-Sword Mountains. From that mountain peak, this angle was the best for observing them. He would be able to differentiate between each mountain. No wonder when Ao Shui told Lin Feng to walk straight into the depths of the Nine-Dragon Mountain chain, and after 5 kilometers later he would see, and indeed, that was the case. Anyone, when seeing these 9 lofty mountains, would have known that they were Mount Sword. But there were really some wonders created by nature. Surprisingly, the earth had created 9 lofty mountains which resembled swords that looked like they were cutting through the heavens. How extraordinary! What mighty swords! Finally, Lin Feng arrived at the foot of the mountain and stood on a gigantic rock on a steep slope. He then calmly looked at the 9 sword mountains. He needed to concentrate a great deal to see as far as their summits, so he could see the entire sword. How domineering! Lin Feng raised his head and looked at the summit of the mountains. In front of him, there were the 9 gigantic swords. They looked domineering, they could pierce the earth and the sky. It was extremely impressive. No, I can't. Being domineering doesn't play an important role at all in my sword path. That mountain could really benefit swords which contained a domineering aura, but it's not appropriate for my sword. I cannot let the sword path in my heart be influenced. Lin Feng was thinking deep in his heart. He gradually emerged from his thoughts. Indeed, if a cultivator had just started practicing the sword and randomly absorbed that sword energy and improved it, they would become much stronger. However, Lin Feng's sword already had its own path. His sword was almost alive and had its own type of energy. He couldn't carelessly follow any sword path. He wouldn't necessarily become stronger. On the contrary, it could actually hinder his current path and cause great harm to his future advancements. What Lin Feng needed was a pure heart that followed a clear path. Because he was able to absorb some of the energy from these mountains, it could influence the sword path in his heart. At the foot of the mountain, not far from Lin Feng, there was a silhouette brandishing their sword over and over again. It was becoming stronger with each movement. It contained a domineering energy as if it contained the strength of the mountains. Exactly as I thought, simply observing the Mount Sword will not make anyone advance. It's not that simple, whispered Lin Feng. Without the slightest doubt, that person's sword was becoming stronger with each movement and was filled with a domineering energy which was growing stronger as well. As expected, that cultivator had been learning from the swords of Mount Sword, but it contained the chi of Mount Sword. But, did he really understand swords? Maybe practicing that way and studying the sword energy of these mountains could help them be outstanding for a short while, but in the end, it was hollow. An authentic sword cultivator didn't need to study the sword energy of other sword paths. What they needed was to understand their own sword energy, and only then could they walk down their own sword path. This was the only way it would benefit their future progress. Let's switch the angles, maybe there will be a difference, said Lin Feng. Immediately after, he flew towards the east at full speed. He was constantly flying around, and once in a while, he was turning his head and looking at the mountains. Lin Feng didn't stop flying higher and higher. The higher he was, the more he realized that these mountains were magnificent. It seemed that no matter where a person went, none could escape from them. When Lin Feng looked at a sword mountain not far from him, he had the impression that the sword was on his side. Lin Feng didn't stop flying higher. In his field of vision, there were now all 9 sword mountains. They looked smaller and smaller, but they were still filled with an incredible sword energy. When Lin Feng stepped on the top of a mountain, Lin Feng was stupefied. At that moment, he was higher than the 9 sword mountains. It was incredible. He was looking down at the 9 swords. How powerful, it almost looks like they're coming at me, thought Lin Feng. All the 9 swords seemed like they were moving to kill him. A person's strength can't exceed the laws of the universe. No matter how strong you are, there is always someone who can surpass you in the end, said Lin Feng to himself, looking down at these 9 sword mountains. At the moment when Lin Feng was standing at the foot of the mountain, he was looking up at these mountains and had the impression that they were incredibly domineering. It looked like they were attacking the heavens. But while standing at the top of another mountain and looking down on these 9 mountains, his heart was filled with lofty sentiments. Maybe everybody that came to study the energy of these mountains had different experiences and different ways to improve their sword path. Lin Feng had first looked up at them and now he was looking down on them. Every sword cultivator trusts their sword. Cultivators are determined to constantly improve themselves, but to do that, they need an incredible courage and only then could they stand above everyone else, looking down. Lin Feng didn't stay looking at the top of Mount Sword for long. A short while after, he went down again. Then he started to repeatedly go up and down the different mountains while observing the 9 sword mountains from different angles. Lin Feng kept doing that for 3 days. In 3 days, he had seen the 9 sword mountains from every possible angle. Finally, on the 4th day, Lin Feng came back to the top of that mountain where he could observe them and sat down cross-legged. Calmly, he sat down on the top of that mountain and closed his eyes. Without making any sounds or any movements, there was only a gentle breeze blowing across Lin Feng's body at the top of the mountain. It was making Lin Feng's long hair sway gently. Lin Feng meditated there for 3 days. Lin Feng had observed the 9 sword mountains from different angles for 3 days, and then he meditated for another 3 days. On the 7th day, a milky white energy started rising into the air towards the sun. It was floating gently on the horizon. Full of vigor and vitality, rays of sunlight were shining down onto Lin Feng's body. It felt warm and relaxing. In the past, I watched the sun rise and fall for 3 days and understood 3 new sword skills: Sword of the Rising Sun, Scorching Sword, and Sword of the Setting Sun. Lin Feng thought, I have made great progress on the path of cultivation. I learnt the Cosmos Burning Sun skill, a sun skill, except the Scorching Sword which changed after I learned the sun skill. My Sword of the Rising Sun and the Sword of the Setting Sun haven't changed at all. My Scorching Sword and Sword of the Rising Sun as well as my Sword of the Setting Sun will become my ultimate attacks, said Lin Feng. An extremely sharp sword energy appeared as Lin Feng suddenly moved. In Lin Feng's hand appeared a brilliant sword light. He condensed it to create a pure qi sword. In Lin Feng's hand appeared a brilliant sword light. He condensed it to create a pure qi sword. Lin Feng slowly used the sword in his hand to practice his movements. The sword had slowly risen into the air like the rising sun of a new day. It was filled with vitality. Lin Feng's sword abruptly stopped halfway in the air. Lin Feng had stopped his movement and started to frown. My Sword of the Rising Sun requires the energy of the rising sun. Even though it is full of vitality, its killing potential is much too weak, thought Lin Feng. Immediately after, he condensed another sword and he started the movements again, but it still had the same weakness. This time, Lin Feng was only practicing his sword skills and wasn't using deadly energy or battle energy. Combining multiple types of energy could strengthen the explosive power of a sword, but it wouldn't help Lin Feng break through another layer of the sword dimension. After having reached a certain sword level, it was necessary to understand one's own true nature. Only a pure and unadulterated sword could help a sword cultivator progress on the path of sword cultivation, because each sword contained its own energy. Lin Feng condensed another sword, and so on as if he had forgotten the passage of time. He didn't even stop to breathe, all he was focused on was his sword. It's slower now, impossible, even though it has the qi of the rising sun, it's still too slow, I can't kill anyone with that. This one is too quick, it doesn't resemble a rising sun. It seemed like there was a flaw and Lin Feng couldn't find a balance. At that moment, he suddenly stopped. He didn't condense another sword and instead he looked at the 9 sword mountains in the distance. He seemed pensive and lost in thought. The 9 sword mountains looked very similar, they all had the shape of a sword, but they didn't look entirely the same. From different angles, Lin Feng got a different impression, especially from above and from the foot of the mountains. When he was looking up at the mountains, Lin Feng had the impression that the swords were piercing the heavens. When he looked at the mountains from above, they looked unstoppable as if they were coming for his life. the same swords gave completely different feelings. The same swords, but different feelings. Lin Feng was stupefied, his eyes twinkled. He looked at the sun again. It was gradually rising in the sky, it was becoming more and more dazzling as it moved higher into the sky. The sunlight was also becoming more and more powerful. Another sword appeared in Lin Feng's hand. Without any hesitation, Lin Feng started his movements again. That sword looked resplendent and very slow, as if it was only meant to be beautiful. It didn't have any killing potential at all, but without one even realizing it, that sword was becoming more and more dazzling and was filled with the endless power of the rising sun. By the time the sword was halfway up in the air, it was so dazzling that it could rival with the sun. That sword was neither slow nor quick, it was just like the rising sun. At first it only drew people's attention because of the beauty, and then as it moved higher into the sky, it became more powerful without even realizing, and in the blink of an eye, it had become scorching hot. The sword of the rising sun was diffusing a bright and incredibly dazzling light across the surrounding area. Everything seemed to disappear into that light, only the sword was remaining. "Scorching sword," said Lin Feng. The sword of the rising sun turned into the scorching sword. There was absolutely no distinction that could be made between the sword of the rising sun and the scorching sword. The sword of the rising sun naturally turned into the scorching sword. Sirrr! Sirrr! A subtle crackling sound emerged from the atmosphere, and suddenly 100-meter-long dazzling sword light burst into the sky. Everything in the area was unable to escape from that dazzling sword light. It even contained the scorching heat of the sun, which invaded the entire area. That scorching sword seemed like it had enveloped the entire universe. Sword of the setting sun. The scorching sword was still illuminating the area around Lin Feng when suddenly, the sword energy started to change and it lost its radiance. Just like the setting sun, it gave the feeling of nostalgia. At the moment when it was the most dazzling, that sword suddenly began to turn into a desolate and somber sword. These three sword attacks formed a single sword attack. The rising sun would naturally turn into a scorching sun, which then became a setting sun. This had been the same since the creation of the universe, it was never going to change. Boom! 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 The ground started to burst and explode. The tip of the mountain had been split into two. There was an extremely deep cut on the top of the mountain. The deep cut looked like it led straight to the depths of the mountain and looked as if it was created by a sword. What an unbelievable destructive power! Lin Feng looked at the dispersing light and sighed. At that moment, Lin Feng was merely studying his sword. He wasn't using the power of his cosmos burning sun. If he had used it, the destructive power of his attack would have doubled. When thinking about that, Lin Feng started using his cosmos burning sun skill, and immediately, a powerful sun chi was released. Lin Feng's entire body was surrounded by flames as he bathed in the sunlight. The sun in the sky shone down towards Lin Feng through the valley as if it was reluctant to leave Lin Feng's side. The sun was actually illuminating Lin Feng. Besides, a sun pattern had distinctly appeared on Lin Feng's body. When using his cosmos burning sun skill under the sunlight, Lin Feng felt like his entire body was filled with an endless strength and power, as if he gained the power of the sun. His sword started to move again. It was dazzling as it illuminated the atmosphere. A thunderous rumbling sound spread through the atmosphere, and they all originated from the top of the mountain on which Lin Feng was standing. Lin Feng was in absolute immersion with his sword. While practicing sword cultivation, his heart couldn't be distracted by anything else. The only thing he had in mind was his sword. Sword cultivation. In the distance, at the foot of the mountain, Feng Ting and the others were gazing into the distance. When they looked at the top of the mountain, they were all astonished. How strong! I wonder who that prodigy is. He has an extremely advanced knowledge of swords, whispered Feng Ting. She could only see the dazzling light of the sword of the rising sun. It was even more dazzling than the real sun above them in the sky. Even though she was very far away, Feng Ting could still sense the destructive power that the sword contained. The sword cuts in the mountain left her feeling extremely puzzled. Those who were with Feng Ting were also all staring at the top of the mountain. Each and every single one of them was astonished. They all wished that they would one day be that strong. When such a sword appeared, the earth and the sky looked colorless in comparison. The only reason they were able to look at it for such a long time was because they were so far away from it. If they had been near it, they probably wouldn't even be able to keep their eyes open. Boom! 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 Feng Ting and the others almost fell to the ground, which stupefied them. "What's going on?" asked Feng Ting in a low voice. Immediately after, thunderous rumbling sounds unceasingly invaded the atmosphere. The ground beneath their feet was even shaking. "What's going on? What is happening?" Feng Ting and the others didn't dare to make a move. The ground was unceasingly shaking under their feet, as if the earth was about to crack open. It was shaking more and more intensely with each passing second. What was going on? They all had a massive amount of sweat on their foreheads. They had never experienced such a strange phenomenon. The entire ground seemed like it was going to collapse under their feet. They raised their heads and saw that the mountain was also shaking. It was terrifying. Feng Ting and the ones accompanying her weren't the only people in the area. There were other people practicing their sword skills. At that moment, they had all stopped and were all astonished. Gigantic boulders were falling down the slope of the mountain. It was emitting a rumbling noise which filled the atmosphere, but the most terrifying part was that, in front of them, the 9 sword mountains were violently shaking and breaking apart. The ground continued shaking more intensely throughout the entire area. Everyone was panic-stricken and had all stopped whatever they were doing. They were all dumbstruck. Beasts were roaring, neighing and howling and going insane as they ran away from the source of the tremors. Only Lin Feng was left at the top of the mountain practicing his sword cultivation. He was in full immersion with his sword dimension. The world around him could explode and fall apart, but he would remain focused on his sword. In his heart, there was nothing but his sword. Lin Feng was in the sword dimension studying his sword. It seemed like he had forgotten about the rest of the world and forgotten the time. According to rumors, those who could penetrate into the dimension of earth fusion had an incredible understanding and could reach their moments of enlightenment more easily. That rumor wasn't wrong. Lin Feng was precisely in fusion with the earth and having a moment of enlightenment. An incredible sword energy emerged and oppressed the atmosphere across several hundred kilometers as it rose into the sky. That incredible sword energy filled the sky. It was unceasingly growing stronger as the energy spread over a larger area. Several hundred kilometers around the mountain, all the retreating ferocious beasts no longer dared to move an inch and every cultivator had turned deathly pale. How was such a thing possible? How could such a powerful sword energy appear in Xueyu? That sword energy could destroy the heavens. Kacha! It seemed like that sound came from the sky. That sword energy which rose into the sky was growing even more terrifying. The 9 mountains started shaking even more and looked as if they were going to collapse. In the territory of the Yu clan, an old white-haired cultivator, who was practicing his cultivation, abruptly opened his eyes when he sensed that incredible sword energy. His facial expression drastically changed. "Oh no, this is bad." He howled furiously and then jumped into the air, smashing a hole through his roof. He then gazed into the distance in the direction of the 9 sword mountains. It seemed like there was a sword in the sky, a sword made completely from energy. Sweat started to drip from the old man's forehead. The seal was going to break. Who was trying to break the seal on the evil sword? In Xueyu, those who understood the 9-dragon mountain chain the best was the Xueyu clan. In Xueyu, those who understood the 9-dragon mountain chain the best was the Xueyu clan. The Yu clan knew exactly why the 9-dragon mountain chain had its name. It was a blurry part of the history of their clan. According to the rumors, there were 9 ordinary mountains where extremely strong sword cultivators went to practice their sword skills, and these strong cultivators had carved these mountains into 9 mountains which were shaped like swords. But only a core disciple of the Yu clan would know that these 9 swords mountains had that shape because one of their ancestors fought against an extremely strong sword cultivator. It had been a tremendous battle. That extremely strong sword cultivator refused to die and burned his soul strength with an incredible pressure which turned his sword into an evil sword. He then used that evil sword to severely injure the ancestor of the Yu clan, almost killing them. In the end, the ancestor of the Yu clan and another extremely strong cultivator of that time acted together to suppress that evil sword and divide it into 9 parts of power, which they named the 9 dragons. They are also the 9 sword mountains. From that moment, only the strongest cultivators of the Yu clan, who lived in a forest about 50 kilometers away from the 9 sword mountains, knew the truth. On the horizon, black clouds were starting to gather. When the old white-haired man saw these evil clouds, he heaved a sigh. He didn't know exactly when the evil sword was sealed, but at that moment, it seemed to be emerging once again, and he didn't know if it was a fortunate or an ominous event. In Shuiyu, there was surprisingly someone strong enough to break the seal of the evil sword and attract it to him. Only a genius who had broken through to an incredible level of the sword dimension could have achieved such an incredible feat. The old man was wondering who that person could be. That person had surprisingly broken through to an incredible layer within the sword dimension. It was clear that they were already extremely advanced on their path of sword cultivation. Their natural abilities would also be considered terrifying. Fine, why do I need to think so much? The seal has been broken, that might not necessarily be a bad thing, thought the old white-haired man while looking at the black clouds on the horizon. His sharp facial expression gradually turned into a relaxed expression. He didn't care, everything that was fated to happen, would happen. At that moment, the 9 mountains were shaking more and more violently. In the air, black clouds covered the sky. Sunlight was obstructed and darkness had invaded the mountain chain. An extremely terrifying and oppressive qi was covering the earth. Ferocious beasts were crawling on their bellies, even Feng Ting and the others had all fallen onto the ground. Sweat was unceasingly dripping from their foreheads. They had almost collapsed under the pressure. These people didn't know what the old man knew. They didn't know what was happening at all. They just felt like the ground was going to collapse and crumble under their feet. It was too terrifying. That oppressive sword energy made their entire bodies tremble. They didn't dare move, fearing that the celestial sword would kill them if they did. At that moment, Lin Feng also regained consciousness from his flash of enlightenment. He was amazed by the topographical changes that occurred. He would have never thought that when he regained consciousness from his flash of enlightenment, the sky and the ground would look so terrifying. Everybody, even hundreds of kilometers in the periphery, had the same feeling of dread. Lin Feng could also sense the oppressive qi. Besides, at the top of the mountain, the black clouds seemed to be forming directly above him, so he could sense the oppressive qi even more intensely and distinctly than everybody else. What's going on? Thought Lin Feng while a cold sweat dripped from his forehead. Lin Feng gazed into the distance and saw that the 9 mountains were unceasingly shaking and emitting a rumbling noise. These 9 sword mountains were all slowly starting to break in half. At the same time, in the sky above the 9 sword mountains, a sword illusion appeared in the middle of the black clouds. It was a dark and evil sword. What a terrifying strength! What a powerful and brutal evil energy! Thought Lin Feng, who was astonished. He was just under the black clouds and could distinctly sense the evil energy it contained. Wrath, humiliation, hatred and all sorts of evil energy was present, and they were all forming that evil sword. Boom! The mountains seemed to be exploding and the earth was splitting apart. Lin Feng was in a state of shock and violently shaking. The 9 mountains in front of him had suddenly exploded and were collapsing. Huge rocks were falling from the sky and creating whistling sounds as they fell to the earth. There were also some stones which were completely destroyed and turned into powder in the air. A sword, surprisingly, there were swords. Lin Feng's heart was pounding. The rocky surface of the 9 sword mountains had exploded and in front of him appeared 9 gigantic swords. They were gigantic pitch-black swords that looked terrifyingly evil. They were facing the sky, but their terrifying evil energy was absolutely shocking. Not only Lin Feng but everybody else in the region remained frozen in their initial positions. In Shuiyu, many people knew that there were 9 sword mountains in the 9-dragon mountain chain. They knew that by observing these mountains, sword cultivators could become stronger. Everybody knew that these mountains were special, they were filled with a sword cultivator's determination, but what nobody knew was that these 9 sword mountains surprisingly were 9 gigantic swords, and they knew even less that they were terrifying evil swords. At that moment, a deadly light was emerging from these 9 gigantic swords. In the deathly silence of the atmosphere, the 9 swords were shaking and emitting whistling sounds. The evil black clouds started rolling through the sky. Boom! The 9 evil swords rushed in the air and started to shrink. The energy was condensed into 9 normal-sized swords. Suddenly, Lin Feng felt like his entire body was being oppressed by an incredible sword energy which prevented him from moving. His heart was violently pounding. Lin Feng had felt that these swords were alive and they were all staring at him. The dark swords suddenly fell from the sky and fell like meteors towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng was terrified when he saw this. What was going on? Why would these swords suddenly attack him? How could he resist the power of such terrifying swords? Lin Feng couldn't defend himself against these swords, they were too quick. They were so fast that it was unbelievable. Lin Feng had a look of hopeless despair on his face. The evil swords were moving towards him at full speed. A rumbling sound emerged in the atmosphere and immediately after, Lin Feng blacked out. At the top of the mountain where he was standing, there was an incredibly deep crater. Lin Feng and the swords had disappeared into the depths of the mountain. Deep in the darkness, there was no light at all. However, at that moment, Lin Feng felt omniscient. Everything was much clearer and more distinct than usual. I'm not dead. Lin Feng was astonished. He reached out his hand and touched the wall. It felt cold. Lin Feng hadn't died because he could still feel his body. He was still alive, but the 9 swords. At that moment, Lin Feng could sense the 9 swords. They had penetrated into his body. It felt like he could make it appear at any moment, as if the evil sword fused into his body. How could such a thing happen? Lin Feng felt like everything was a nightmare. When Ao Shui had told him about the mountain chain, which is why Lin Feng had come hoping to make a breakthrough. When Lin Feng sensed that the mountains were influencing him, he did not absorb their energy and instead he studied the sword of the rising sun, the scorching sword as well as the sword of the setting sun. Because he had a breakthrough when practicing his skill, he suddenly had a moment of enlightenment. He fell deeply into his sword dimension, but when he regained consciousness, everything outside was collapsing. The 9 sword mountains then exploded and revealed 9 evil swords which attacked him and fused with his body. Everything was too insane. Lin Feng felt like it was too insane for it to be reality. But this was reality. The evil sword had been confined for 1,000 years, it was weakened by a great deal. Over the years it had remained silent and never attempted to break the seal, but then, Lin Feng spent days studying the sword mountains and seemed to have a breakthrough in his sword dimension. That was probably what attracted the evil sword, which then broke the seal and merged with Lin Feng's body. Huh? At that moment, Lin Feng frowned. He could feel the evil sword was consuming his soul. Lin Feng immediately moved the evil sword inside his body, preventing it from having any contact with his soul. As expected, the evil sword calmed down after that and remained silent. It was very intriguing. That evil sword wasn't an ordinary sword. These 9 heavy swords had a life of their own. It seems like I should find a place to give these evil swords a try. Thought Lin Feng, but he couldn't stay in these mountains. Lin Feng's silhouette flickered, he absorbed the sword energy and seemed to transform into a sword. He didn't move towards the sky but instead he moved towards the ground. A subtle crackling sound was spreading through the atmosphere. Lin Feng had cut into the mountain and traveled through the interior of the mountain. After a short period of time, Lin Feng finally emerged from the mountain. At that moment, the black evil clouds had already vanished, the terrifying oppressive sword energy had disappeared as well, but the landscape was suddenly lonely and desolate. Lin Feng was astonished. the 9-sword mountains had completely disappeared. After the swords disappeared, a terrifying pure chi invaded the entire area. That's. Lin Feng's pupils shrank. After the 9-sword mountains had collapsed, the pure chi heaven and earth burst out. It was extremely dense. Even if Lin Feng wasn't close, he could still perfectly sense that extremely dense pure chi. That's. Lin Feng's pupils shrank. After the 9-sword mountains had collapsed, the pure chi heaven and earth burst out. It was extremely dense. Even if Lin Feng wasn't close, he could still perfectly sense that extremely dense pure chi, a vein of pure chi. It's a huge well of pure chi. Lin Feng was astonished. That pure chi had been accumulating throughout the years to the extent that it would condense into purity stones. More and more purity stones were appearing, and it looked like it formed a purity stone mine. Besides, the 9 evil swords were monstrously strong. They had been there for so many years. They were able to bathe in pure chi all this time. No wonder they were so strong. What excited Lin Feng was that nobody had ever suspected that in the 9-dragon mountain chain, under these 9-sword mountains, there were such precious natural resource, a priceless treasure. Besides, Lin Feng was the first to find it, thus, he would be able to mine purity stones and extract the pure chi. No. A moment ago, the evil swords caused some many tremors. They terrified and scared away a lot of people. Very quickly, people will come back and find out that this place is a well of pure chi. Lin Feng didn't get too excited. He knew that in such situations, he had to stay clear-headed. A well of pure chi was priceless. Besides, it contained a myriad of treasures. If it was found by someone else, they would fight Lin Feng for ownership of it. Even those who called each other brother amongst the noble clans, they would still fight each other over the chi vein. At the Celestial Academy, there were 4 wells of pure chi. They had constructed the 4 cultivation towers above them. It was thus clear how precious and valuable pure chi was. I will not be able to seize that well, thought Lin Feng. Lin Feng saw how thick and rich the pure chi was. It was obviously huge. It would attract many people and lead to a war. Lin Feng didn't have the power to seize it. When Lin Feng thought about that, his silhouette flickered and he streaked through the sky towards the well of pure chi. At the same time, he started using the acute senses from the earth fusion. Everything that surrounded him could be clearly sensed by him. In a flash, Lin Feng arrived at the place where the 9-sword mountains were destroyed. Pure chi was floating above the ground like a mist. Lin Feng released an incredible quantity of sword energy. A sword formed of pure chi flashed, and started unceasingly absorbing the pure chi. Lin Feng's body transformed into a sword and immediately penetrated deep into the chi well. He opened his Na stone on his ring and stored all the purity stones inside. Even if he couldn't absorb all the pure chi of the well, he could at least pick up the treasures inside, especially since he was the one who discovered it. It contains so many precious treasures. Cultivators would never refuse purity stones. Even if they didn't use them, they could also exchange them for other things. Purity stones was the basic currency of a cultivator. So many, there isn't even enough space in my Na stone. Very quickly, Lin Feng looked satisfied. That well of pure chi was shocking. It was filled purity stones. Stones of lower quality were numerous, but they were mixed with purity stones of average quality as well. It was so insane that here and there, Lin Feng even found some precious dazzling treasures, purity stones of higher quality. One purity stone of higher quality was equivalent to 10,000 purity stones of lower quality. It was incomparable. I don't want those of lower quality, decided Lin Feng. The space in his Na stone was limited. If he used it all for purity stones of lower quality, he wouldn't have enough space for purity stones of average quality. Besides, he didn't have to be worried about the well not having enough purity stones of average quality. Therefore, Lin Feng had decided to abandon the purity stones of lower quality. That way he would be able to collect the greatest value. Lin Feng had made a fortune. That place existed for thousands of years, and it was the first time that Lin Feng had accumulated such wealth. Being rich was a marvelous feeling. Lin Feng would be able to give these purity stones to his Qi Xia troops to use for their cultivation. It would be extremely beneficial to them. Lin Feng would be able to create a monstrously powerful army. Lin Feng surpassed many geniuses of his age. He had no social background, no influence, and relied only on himself. Because of that, he was constructing his own sphere of influence. Lu Lan had given him the Qi Xia army precisely for that purpose. Lin Feng was moving through the vein of the earth at full speed, picking up the highest quality purity stones. What's this? At that moment Lin Feng suddenly discovered a precious treasure. It had 9 leaves that were diffusing a bright white light. It was rich with sun qi and was close to the ground. 9 sun grass. Lin Feng's pupils shrank. Indeed, that energy was that of the 9 sun grass. 9 sun grass had 9 petals which absorbed sun qi and condensed it. Pure qi of heaven and earth as well as sun qi all were extremely beneficial to cultivators. Besides, they had to mature for many years and the probability of them reaching maturity was extremely low. The 9 sun grass had been in the middle of these evil swords for so many years, and had absorbed sun qi and pure qi. All this made it perfect growing conditions. You can wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, and yet find what you are looking for when you have stopped searching. Lin Feng immediately thought this expression was appropriate to describe the situation he was in. He needed 9 sun grass and it had suddenly appeared in front of him when he wasn't looking for it. His silhouette flickered and he started picking up the 9 sun grass which he put inside of his Na stone. To store this grass, Lin Feng separated a special place in the stone. Lin Feng was acting and reacting. He meticulously searched for more 9 sun grass. Lin Feng didn't know precisely how much pure qi it contained, but it was a real treasure. As expected, there is even more. Smiled Lin Feng. His smile was resplendent. That place contains so much 9 sun grass, there might even be a second place where there is more, and then a third place. Anything is possible. At that moment, some people appeared from the distance. It was Feng Ting and the others. When they sensed the extremely dense and rich pure qi, they stopped and immediately looked delighted. Surprisingly, there was a well of pure qi there. They were growing more excited. There was a vein of the earth. Did they need to remain the protectors of a clan? They could become extremely rich and grab a fortune of purity stones. So many purity stones, said a voice amongst the people. Immediately after, people's silhouettes started flickering and they rushed towards the well and started picking up purity stones. At that moment, they didn't care about anything else. All they could see were purity stones, an endless stream of purity stones. Everybody stop! Shouted the old man furiously next to Feng Ting when he saw all the guards going crazy. What are you doing? Said Feng Ting angrily as well, but everybody ignored her. These guards only looked at her and the old man in a cold and detached way. Immediately after, they continued stealing purity stones, ignoring them. Didn't you hear Shou? Shouted the old man furiously while releasing an ice-cold energy. Shou! If we became guards of your Feng clan, it's only because we needed purity stones. Now that we have purity stones, why would we need to listen to her? What does she intend to do? But against all expectations, she looks pretty good. Wait until we're done picking up purity stones and then we'll have some fun together. Said a strong guard with an evil voice. He was fixedly staring at Feng Ting, especially at her voluptuous chest. The man's eyes were filled with lust. When the other guards, who were picking up purity stones, heard him, they all burst into laughter. She was ridiculous. Feng Ting turned deathly pale. What a bunch of bastards! Besides, the old man's heart was also pounding, but they were both utterly helpless. Xiao, let's pick up purity stones as well, said the old man. Feng Ting nodded and they both started picking up purity stones as they could no longer count on the guards. Xiao, look, over there. At that moment, While picking up purity stones, the old man's pupils shrank. He had seen something on the ground. It was twinkling. 9 sun grass, it's 9 sun grass. Feng Ting was astonished, she shivered from head to toe. Indeed, it's 9 sun grass, Xiao, grab it quickly, said the old man in a quiet voice. Feng Ting nodded and walked towards the grass. She stretched her little hand towards the 9 sun grass, but her arm was too short to reach it. 7. At that moment, a voice suddenly emerged in the atmosphere. Feng Ting hadn't managed to grab anything, but at that moment, the 9 sun grass immediately disappeared. At the same time, a silhouette flashed past her. 7. Said Lin Feng while looking at the 9 sun grass in his hand. He was smiling wholeheartedly. He then stored it into his ring. Xiao, it's my fault, said the old man while moving next to Feng Ting. He felt remorseful and uneasy. He was the one who refused Lin Feng's offer to join their search. Feng Ting remained silent. She didn't know what to say or do. At the same time, in the distance, many silhouettes were unceasingly rushing towards that place. There were extremely strong cultivators as well as extremely powerful ferocious beasts. Cultivators had just seen the sword illusion as well as the black clouds. All of this was very intriguing. They had noticed that the black clouds had finally disappeared, so they were rushing over to see what happened. Concerning the ferocious beasts, their senses were extremely acute. How could they not notice the pure qi? It couldn't escape their extremely acute senses. After a while, a few silhouettes descended from the sky. When they sensed that extremely thick pure qi, they were stupefied. It was a vein of the earth. Surprisingly, a gigantic vein of the earth appeared there. More and more extremely strong cultivators sensed the pure qi and thus rushed over to that place. Lin Feng's eyes were filled with a sharp light, his silhouette flickered and he then moved towards a guard from the Feng clan at full speed. That guard wasn't weak. A moment before, he had also gathered a great number of purity stones in the stone of his ring. Piss off, said the guard while looking at Lin Feng and immediately threw a punch towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng smiled as if he found the situation amusing. Sword light illuminated the atmosphere and a horrible shriek spread through the air. The guard was killed and Lin Feng then picked up his ring. He was also the only guard to have a ring with a Na stone. Lin Feng didn't stop there at all. His silhouette flickered again and he appeared in front of somebody else. In a flash, Lin Feng broke through the opponent's defense and punched backwards, which created a strong wind around them. With a single movement he had taken another ring. That person only had purity stones of medium quality. If Lin Feng didn't steal them, someone else would and they would definitely kill the guard. Very quickly, Lin Feng stole 2 more rings. After that he went back to the surface. At that moment, on the surface, there was already a great deal of strong cultivators. If Lin Feng continued to steal Na stones, he would become everybody's target, which would be terrifying. At that moment, Lin Feng had already picked 7 stems of 9 sun grass and a great number of purity stones. That was already a great harvest. Little boy, you are very audacious. You surprisingly dare be so greedy. Lin Feng looked at the person who spoke. It was a middle-aged man. He smiled but didn't reply. Lin Feng didn't want to become everybody's target. He had to remain discreet. Miss Feng, how come you haven't taken anything? Asked the middle-aged man, sounding indifferent while looking at Feng Ting. Surprisingly, they were acquainted with each other. I am the first one to discover the vein of the earth. I didn't even say that I wanted it. I just picked up a few items. That's my compensation, said Lin Feng, sounding cold. Telling you to get lost is to give you face. You're acting recklessly, said Mr. Li, sounding ice cold. He believed Lin Feng was a weak cultivator, so he was looking down on him. Lin Feng would never want to share anything with them. Telling me to get lost was giving me face. Act recklessly. Lin Feng looked at the middle-aged man while narrowing his eyes. Immediately after, Lin Feng smiled coldly. Telling me to get lost was giving me face. Act recklessly. Lin Feng looked at the middle-aged man while narrowing his eyes. Immediately after, Lin Feng smiled coldly. Is that so? He slightly stepped forwards, as a sword energy emerged from Lin Feng's body. Huh? Mr. Li looked at Lin Feng walking forward and sensed the cold energy which made him frown. He then said coldly, could it be that you want to battle? Lin Feng didn't say anything, he started walking forwards and in a flash, a rumbling noise spread through the atmosphere. The ground under their feet caved in. Lin Feng swiftly jumped through the air and released a colossal amount of sword energy. Then, dazzling flames started to unceasingly burn around his body. It's pure qi. The crowd was astonished. Xian qi layer. Lin Feng was also a cultivator of the Xian qi layer like them. A moment before, he had tried to leave without taking a share in the vein of the earth, but surprisingly, some people foolishly tried to stop him and force him to abandon his items and told him to get lost. Feng Ting's pupils shrank, her heart started pounding. Lin Feng was a cultivator of the Xian qi layer, she had surprisingly refused his request. Besides, she had incited people to fight against him. Mr. Li frowned, he looked like he was going to explode. Lin Feng remained silent and immediately attacked him. Mr. Li released some pure qi and said coldly, you don't know how to distinguish good from bad, therefore I will teach you a lesson. When he finished talking, he immediately jumped into the air and threw himself at Lin Feng. The man's hand zigzagged and a hook illusion appeared as it released a black light. Sword! Shouted Lin Feng in a deep voice. Pure qi started revolving in the air and a pure qi sword appeared in Lin Feng's hand, it was releasing a terrifying sword energy. Sword of the Rising Sun. Lin Feng hadn't arrived at his opponent's side, but he was slowly starting his Sword of the Rising Sun. It wasn't quick, that sword could even be described as slow, but it was filled with vitality. Just like the morning rising sun, it wasn't dazzling and extremely beautiful, which caught people's eyes. Mr. Li smiled as if he found it amusing. What a ridiculous sword attack. It looks so slow, how could such a sword ever reach him? He just had to unleash a weak attack and the sword attack would disperse. People in the crowd were also shaking their heads. Both fighters had broken through to the Xian qi layer, but Lin Feng must have only just broken through, his fighting power was still too weak, he probably wouldn't even be a match for Mr. Li. However, Lin Feng was still moving forwards. That slow sword, just like the sun, was slowly rising into the air, it was becoming more and more resplendent, it was also growing brighter and brighter. Die! Shouted Mr. Li furiously. His hook-like hand moved forwards, it contained a deadly energy and it looked amazing. However, that amazing hook, when it collided with Lin Feng's slow sword, was completely swallowed and disappeared. The only thing left was the splendor of the sword, which was magnificent. It looked so captivating, as if nothing else existed other than that dazzling magnificence. Huh! The crowd was a bit surprised. That sword was slow and calm, giving them a beautiful and serene impression, but it was as if their eyes couldn't escape from it. Mr. Li frowned as well. Immediately after, he moved backwards, however, he found out that even though he was moving back, the sword was still moving towards him and the distance separating him from the sword wasn't increasing at all. That sword was still moving slowly and looked like an illusion, but it was closely following him and growing brighter and brighter. That sword, was it a real sword or was it a sword skill? It seemed like it was constantly changing, it was also growing more and more powerful. The crowd was dumbstruck and immediately after, they realized that the dazzling sword was crashing into Mr. Li's body, on his forehead there was a blood mark, and immediately after, he fell from the sky and his corpse crashed into the ground. A cultivator of the Xian qi layer was just killed. Lin Feng needed only one sword attack to kill him. He had demanded that Lin Feng give him his ring and to get lost, but in the end, Lin Feng killed him using only one sword attack. Mr. Li's eyes were still filled with remorse for starting the conflict. He was a majestic cultivator of the Xianqi layer, being killed because of this wasn't worth it. You acted recklessly, said Lin Feng, using the sentence which the opponent said to him. Unfortunately, Mr. Li couldn't hear these words. Lin Feng turned around and looked at the 5 other people. He then said coldly, I will leave. It's not because I'm scared of you, it's because I know that I will not be able to seize that vein of the earth. It will most likely be seized by an influential group of the imperial city. One person alone is nothing, one of us seizing that vein of the earth is impossible. You are all just like me, you cannot seize it. The best thing you can do is, like me, steal a few purity stones and then leave. That guy was ridiculous to think that he could take my ring, he was an arrogant fool, and he had even believed that he would be able to seize that vein of the earth with his power. The others were a bit surprised. When they had arrived, they wanted to seize the treasure and were blinded by their own greed. A moment before, they had been just like Mr. Li. They thought that they would be able to seize the well of pure qi, especially at the moment when Lin Feng had said that he would let them share it together without joining. It had made them feel even more excited, but Lin Feng's words were like a cold shower. They wouldn't be able to seize the well of pure qi with their power. What if we all act together and seize part of it? If people come, we join together against them, how does that sound? Said one of them who didn't want to give up. Even if it meant only having a small section, it would be enough to constantly improve their cultivation levels. They would never have problems with purity stones again. After all, cultivators of the Xianqi layer required a terrifying amount of pure qi which could be gained from purity stones. Relying on the pure qi that was in the air, it would be too slow. Impossible, we are only 6 people, we are barely even a small power in the imperial city. Steal some purity stones, take as many as you can, otherwise, the most influential groups of the imperial city will come and you will not be able to obtain anything. Said Lin Feng, sounding indifferent. The news that a vein of the earth had appeared would spread very quickly, they wouldn't be able to hide it, and the most influential powers of the city would soon learn about it. The Yu clan and even the Imperial clan would try to seize it for themselves. 6 people together would never be able to keep it. The other 5 looked unrelenting to give up, but what Lin Feng was saying was true. They wouldn't be able to cope with the influential groups of the imperial city. They could only rush, grab as much as they could and leave. They weren't resigned to give up, but they had to admit that Lin Feng was right. Someone's silhouette flickered and he immediately dived into the well of pure qi, then he started picking up purity stones. Very quickly, the others did the same and started extracting purity stones as well. Ah! A horrible shriek spread in the air. A guard of the Feng clan was killed. A cultivator of the Xianqi layer who was wearing the black Chang Pao then said in a cold and detached way, that piece of trash also wanted to take away some purity stones. After that, the air was filled with shrieks as people started to die. Many of the Feng clan's guards were killed while trying to grab some purity stones. If they had the bad luck to come across any of the cultivators of the Xianqi layer, they would end up dead. They had no strength but wanted to grab purity stones, that was reckless. Cultivators of the Xianqi layer were merciless. Would they allow the weak cultivators to take purity stones that they wanted? Very quickly, each and every single Feng clan guard stopped picking up purity stones. They moved back to the ground and all pulled long faces. Feng Ting also wanted to pick up some purity stones, but Lin Feng prevented her from moving forwards. He glanced at her and said coldly, "You have 10 seconds, if I still see your face, I will kill you." Lin Feng said the word kill in a particularly emphasized way which made Feng Ting's face go rigid and turn deathly pale. A moment before, she had told Mr. Li that Lin Feng was carrying the 9 sun grass. Lin Feng had a good reason to kill her. In Lin Feng's eyes, her beautiful face was hideous to look at. "Xiao, let's go," said the old man next to Feng Ting. Lin Feng was too strong, they couldn't afford to provoke him any further. If they didn't leave, Lin Feng would kill Feng Ting. The old man was full of remorse. Why did he refuse Lin Feng's proposition in the beginning? After they left, The guards also left with them, their silhouettes were disappearing one after the other. Lin Feng didn't pay attention to them. With his acute senses, Lin Feng opened the space of his ring and started sorting his purity stones of medium and higher quality. However, at that moment, ferocious beasts roared and the ground started to shake. Many ferocious beasts were charging towards the vein of the earth. At the same time, many troops from the imperial city were rushing through the air emitting whistling sounds. They were rushing towards Mount Sword. After Lin Feng finished sorting his purity stones, his silhouette flickered and appeared in front of the cultivator wearing the black Chang Pao. After Lin Feng finished sorting his purity stones, his silhouette flickered and appeared in front of the cultivator wearing the black Chang Pao. "What are you doing?" asked the cultivator in the black Chang Pao while frowning, and then said, "Take some purity stones, you take your things, I take my things, let's not intervene in each other's affairs." "The others can, you can't," said Lin Feng sounding cold and detached, which made the man in the black Chang Pao frown even more. "Earlier, you told me to leave my things here and to get lost. Well, now I will repeat that back to you, give me your ring and get lost," said Lin Feng coldly. A moment before, the one in the black Chang Pao had supported Mr. Li and tried to rob Lin Feng. At that moment, Mr. Li was dead, but the one in the black Chang Pao was still there. Lin Feng wouldn't let him off so easily. He tried to steal from Lin Feng. He had to get his revenge. "Why didn't you attack me a moment ago? Why did you wait until now?" said the one in the black Chang Pao, pulling a long face. Actually, after he had seen that Lin Feng killed Mr. Li, he was shocked and had feared that Lin Feng would then kill him for demanding his ring and telling him to get lost, but Lin Feng acted as if he hadn't heard it and ignored him until that moment. "I thought that I should let you pick up some purity stones for me, isn't it better that way?" said Lin Feng moving forwards. The one in the black Chang Pao suddenly started shaking and rushed into the ground. Lin Feng smiled coldly, his sword diffused a powerful energy which split the ground open and Lin Feng jumped inside. Lin Feng had just dived into the ground, but immediately, an incredibly brutal punch attacked him by surprise. It was filled with pure qi and unleashed a cold wind. Lin Feng stopped in a flash. Lin Feng inclined his body to the side and dodged the attack. Immediately a rumbling noise spread through the atmosphere. The punch struck the earth and a huge hole had appeared. "You might have killed him, but that doesn't mean that you can act wildly," said the man in the black Chang Pao coldly while staring at Lin Feng. "Is that so?" said Lin Feng while staring at him as well. He then slowly walked forwards while releasing his sword energy. Then he said, "Since you don't want your life, I will take it." When Lin Feng finished talking, deadly energy flowed into the atmosphere. Lin Feng took a step forwards and his sword immediately descended in the direction of his opponent. Sword qi was piercing through the air emitting tearing sounds. The man in the black Chang Pao didn't try to dodge. He joined both his hands and a terrifying black vortex condensed from his hands. It was emitting some whirling sound in the air. It looked powerful. The pure qi sword started to cut through the black vortex emitting ripping sounds, and then it suddenly stopped. It was stuck in the vortex, unable to move forwards. "You are way too arrogant. You killed a cultivator of the Xianqi layer, but that doesn't mean anything. The one who will die here is you," said the man in the black Chang Pao while looking at Lin Feng. The distance between them was extremely short, and behind the strong cultivator in the black Chang Pao appeared many strange black bestial-looking tentacles which then rushed towards Lin Feng to constrict him. "You're not the only one who has a spirit," said Lin Feng as coldly. Behind him an endless stream of purple tentacles emerged. Every tentacle looked like a ferocious beast. It seemed like there was an endless quantity of them. There were at least 10 times more purple tentacles than black tentacles, maybe even several times more than that. In the blink of an eye, the purple tentacles subdued the black tentacles and moved towards the man in the black Chang Pao to constrict him. The sudden change made his facial expression change drastically. The vortex he had in his hands broke and released an incredible energy as he abruptly retreated backwards. "How dangerous!" thought the man in the black Chang Pao when he saw that the purple tentacles still hadn't appeared in front of him, there was only the black vortex dispersing. He felt like luck was on his side. But at that moment, he was startled. Immediately after, he saw that there was a subtle glittering light coming from the shadows, which made him frown. That looks bad. An extremely sharp chi reached his body. It was becoming a critical situation which made his facial expression change once again. He wanted to move back but it was already too late. A black cross emerged, it looked incredibly lethal and then a deep cross mark appeared on his chest. He lowered his head and saw that a bleeding cross-shaped wound appeared on his chest, and suddenly, Lin Feng was standing in front of him. Deadly cross shadow, Lin Feng transformed into a shadow and attacked with deadly precision. I had told you to leave your ring here, said Lin Feng coldly. He then released a deadly chi which streaked through the air and blasted through the opponent's body. Immediately after, his ring rose into the air and Lin Feng caught it. The man in the black Chang Pao slowly collapsed. Another cultivator of the Xian Qi layer had just been killed. Everything had happened in an extremely short time. At that moment, the 4 other cultivators of the Xian Qi layer stopped picking up purity stones and looked at Lin Feng as well as the corpse on the ground. They had both broken through to the Xian Qi layer but Lin Feng had killed him like he was butchering a chicken. He had done it in a very relaxed and ruthless manner. That young man was terrifying and everybody was looking at him with both respect and fear in their eyes. Don't worry, I do not attack anyone who isn't my enemy, said Lin Feng when he saw the 4 other cultivators looking at him with a slight fear in their eyes. Immediately after, he gazed into the distance and only heard the terrifying roars as fire ignited in the atmosphere. We should leave and let the others fight. You want to leave like that? Said someone who was not resigned to leave. They still had time to pick up so much from that well of pure chi. Giving up and leaving was too frustrating. If you don't want to leave, you can stay here, said Lin Feng sounding indifferent. Lin Feng and that person weren't acquainted. Lin Feng was just warning them. Whether they listened to him or not had nothing to do with him. That person was a bit surprised and gnashed their teeth, unwilling to give up, but he still ended up nodding and saying, all right, let's go. Go? None of you will leave. A voice came from the distance. It was incredibly aggressive and domineering, which slightly surprised Lin Feng and the others. They looked into the distance. There was a fire which was moving nearer to them. Surprisingly, it was a ferocious beast that seemed to be on fire. That ferocious beast looked extremely majestic. It was gigantic and fire-red. There were also extremely sharp thorns covering its body. The most amazing thing was that on the beast's back, there were 2 fire-red wings flapping in the air. Demonic fire lion. When Lin Feng saw that ferocious beast, his pupils shrank. Surprisingly, it was a demonic fire lion. In the past, he had obtained it from the prisoner's arena of the imperial city, however he immediately sold it. As expected, the demonic fire lion was extremely strong. It has surprisingly already become a Xian-level beast, thought Lin Feng. The highest level a demonic fire lion could reach was the Tian level. Back then, Lin Feng was too weak. He only had the strength of the 5th Ling Qi layer, so he was unable to control it, otherwise he wouldn't have given it up. Of course, in his hands, the demonic fire lion wouldn't have been able to reach the Xian level that quickly. After all, people of the Wanshou men were experts at raising ferocious beasts. They could make them grow stronger very quickly. They were obviously more skilled than Lin Feng. The master of the demonic fire lion was a disciple of the Wanshou men sect who obtained it in the auction sale, Guangshi. Lin Feng could remember how terrified the arrogant Meng Tsong had been of Guangshi. Almost 2 years after, Guangshi had also broken through to the Xian Qi layer. Apart from Guangshi and the demonic fire lion he was riding, there were other people surrounding Lin Feng and the other 4. They were also riding all sorts of ferocious beasts and hiding in the forest. They were just encircling Lin Feng and the others. However, these ferocious beasts seemed much weaker in comparison. Guangshi recognized Lin Feng and said, "What a coincidence, thank you for the demonic fire lion, but today, since I discovered this vein of the earth, it belongs to the Wanshou sect. If you don't want to burn, give me all the items that are in your ring and I will let you off. Wanshou sect. Lin Feng and the 4 other cultivators of the Xianqi layer around him were astonished. As expected, one of the influential powers of the country had appeared. You discovered it? I am the one who discovered it first, said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached. I don't care, I don't want to talk nonsense with you. You either give me your ring and I will let you off, or you can choose to die, said Kuang Shi in an extremely aggressive way. Humph, how audacious. You're only one person, and you only have a single ferocious beast. How can you believe that you can compete with us? Said a cultivator of the Xianqi layer, sounding ice cold. I am alone. How ridiculous, said Kuang Shi, sounding cold and detached. He hadn't even finished talking when his ferocious beast roared. In the dense forest not far away from the Mount Sword, many ferocious beasts and silhouettes appeared, all of them riding ferocious wild beasts. That vein of the earth is ours, said one of them, sounding ice cold. They had all come to the 9-Dragon Mountain to hunt. They hadn't thought that they would find a vein of the earth. The Wanshou sect was situated in Shuiyu. Even though it was standing side by side with the Luoxia sect, the Haoyu sect and the others, they were much stronger than the rest. That's how they gained such a prestigious reputation. The Wanshou sect was situated in Shuiyu. Even though it was standing side by side with the Luoxia sect, the Haoyu sect and the others, they were much stronger than the rest. That's how they gained such a prestigious reputation. Their strength came from the fact that they incorporated ferocious beasts into their skills. The Wanshou sect only accepted disciples who had a beast spirit. They also required every disciple to be extremely gifted. For those who had a beast spirit, this sect was paradise. They had extremely powerful beast skills which helped their spirit grow much stronger. The core disciples of the Wanshou sect could also learn how to tame wild beasts, that made them extremely formidable. This was precisely why the members of the Wanshou sect liked to go to the beast forests. If they were lucky, they could come across a wild beast with similar strength and tame it. Once tamed, they would be able to ride the beast as a mount immediately. Beast forests were the perfect locations for them to practice. Lin Feng was very unlucky to meet them after they had all captured so many ferocious beasts which they were all riding at that moment. Lin Feng looked at Kuang Shi in an ice-cold way. He had only 2 choices. One was to give away his ring with all the items and get lost, the other was to die. Isn't there a third choice? Asked Lin Feng indifferently while looking at Kuang Shi. We are only a few people. We took some purity stones. In comparison with that vein of pure qi, that's just a drop of water in the ocean. It's not even worth mentioning. Besides, I am the one who discovered that vein of pure qi. Don't you think that your requirements are a little exaggerated? Exaggerated? Kuang Shi didn't even have the time to reply when another member of the Wanshou sect spoke with a cold smile. You discovered the vein of the earth, but that isn't a stroke of luck at all. On the contrary, for you, it's actually a calamity. It's an invaluable discovery, but you can't keep it and we can't let you leave just like that. If we let you leave in peace, what will we say to the sect when they question us? Are we not able to confront a few nobodies? Since we discovered the vein of the earth, it belongs to us in its entirety. We will not abandon even the tiniest part. Then we will let the sect decide what they want to do with it. Brother Shi is right. There is no third choice. Initially, when you came across that vein of the earth, that was already bad luck, but we will not hesitate and burn you to death. Proposing for you to leave your things here was already polite enough. Don't be too greedy with your requests, said Kuang Shi. If you put it that way, shouldn't I thank you as well for giving me the opportunity to get lost? Joked Lin Feng. Telling him to abandon his items and get lost surprisingly was considered merciful, as if they were giving a wrongdoer a way out. When Kuang Shi heard Lin Feng's joke, he frowned and said in a cold and detached way, I don't care about what you think, that is the situation and it cannot be changed. I don't care about your politeness or proposition, I do not choose either of your options. Let's see how strong you are. Lin Feng released an ice-cold energy after spitting out his words. Indeed, we can act together, we're 5, if they want to kill us, at least half of them will die. Said a cultivator of the Xian-Qi layer next to Lin Feng with a cold expression. These few people of the Wan Shou sect were simply going too far. Half of us? It seems like you don't know that this time, only the best core disciples of the sect have come, joked someone. Immediately after, each and every single disciple of the Wan Shou sect released their qi. It was brutally revolving in the atmosphere, emitting whistling sounds. It was terrifying. How strong! Lin Feng and the others were a bit surprised. Amongst these people, there were 6 cultivators of the Xian-Qi layer and 8 of the Ling-Qi layer. Besides, the beasts they were riding were at similar levels. Therefore, there were 6 cultivators of the Xian-Qi layer and 6 ferocious beasts of Xian level. Besides, amongst them, there were 2 cultivators who were releasing a more powerful energy. They were probably at the second Xian-Qi layer. They were extremely scary. They were all core disciples of the Wan Shou sect. The 6 cultivators of the Xian-Qi layer riding their 6 Xian-level beasts were rushing towards Lin Feng and the others, while the cultivators of the Ling-Qi layer moved back and smiled coldly as they enjoyed the show. Lin Feng and the others had a death wish. Initially the Wan Shou sect had given them a chance, but they didn't appreciate it. They were going to die and could only blame themselves. You 4, fight together, help each other. We can't give them an opportunity that can be exploited. Said Lin Feng in a low voice. The 4 of them then gradually moved close to each other. They had to stick together. If they dispersed, 3 enemies with their 3 ferocious beasts would be able to fight against one of them. They would be killed in an instant. What about you? Asked one of them to Lin Feng. They are not strong enough to kill me. Said Lin Feng, sounding cold and detached, which made the others stupefied. It seemed like Lin Feng hadn't shown his full strength when he killed the 2 other cultivators of the Xian-Qi layer. They all respected him. He was extremely strong. I will not waste time. If I have the opportunity, I will help you. Said Lin Feng to the others. At that moment, they were all in the same situation. They had to support and help each other. Shouted Viper, looking glum. He couldn't stand it anymore. Even though his speed was incredible and already seemed to have reached his maximum speed, he managed to increase it even more with sheer willpower. When he was about to arrive in front of Lin Feng, a black fire filled with deadly energy appeared in front of Lin Feng. At the precise second when he collided with the black fire, his body suddenly started shaking insanely. His body came to an abrupt stop and then he was brutally projected backwards. What a terrifying black fire! When he had collided against it, it seemed like his flesh was burning. You want to leave now? Joked Lin Feng while smiling. The purple light suddenly surrounded him. Besides, Lin Feng slowly raised his hand and an incredibly dazzling sword light started to shine through the atmosphere. That sword was so dazzling that the crowd didn't even dare look at it. Oh no! Kuang Shi saw that Viper was being entangled by Lin Feng's spirit and then noticed that dazzling sword. At that moment, his facial expression drastically changed. Immediately after, he saw a sword as dazzling as the sun fall down from the sky. It was so dazzling that he was forced to close his eyes. A moment before, it seemed like the golden sun was piercing into his eyes. Oh no, this isn't good. Kuang Shi had the feeling that things were far from good. After he opened his eyes, he could only see Viper's body falling down from the sky and he had lost control of his Xian-level ferocious beast. It was fleeing from the fight. You would dare! Shouted Kuang Shi furiously when he saw what Lin Feng was about to do. His demonic fire lion started moving and threw itself towards Lin Feng. Surprisingly, Lin Feng was attacking another disciple who was still fighting, Shui Shi. Shui Shi, brother, be careful! Roared Kuang Shi. At that moment, Shui Shi was raising his monstrous hand and was preparing to attack a cultivator of the Xian-Qi layer who was with Lin Feng. If that hand reached him, the strong cultivator's head would have been crushed into pieces. But in response to that attack, a scorching sword fell from the sky. That sword was extremely dazzling. Lin Feng condensed his pure sun qi and released it. She was also forced to close his eyes at that moment. Ah! My hand! A shout of agony spread through the air. His hand attack, which was supposed to topple mountains and overturn the seas, had been destroyed by that scorching sword, and Shui Shi's hand was instantly cut off. However, the sword didn't stop there. It continued streaking through the sky like a meteor. Blood splashed into the air and blood gushed from Shui Shi's throat. Another cultivator of the Xianqi layer was killed. The battle had just started and 2 of the Wanshou sect's cultivators of the Xianqi layer had already died, killed by Lin Feng. The battle abruptly stopped. The people of the Wanshou sect were all moving back in panic. Viper and Shui Shi were been killed by Lin Feng. Their ferocious beasts had become uncontrollable and were running away. The battle abruptly stopped. The people of the Wanshou sect were all moving back in panic. Viper and Shui Shi were been killed by Lin Feng. Their ferocious beasts had become uncontrollable and were running away. At that moment, on the side of the Wanshou sect, there were only 4 cultivators of the Xianqi layer left with their beasts. In the blink of an eye, their power had significantly decreased. The 4 cultivators were staring at Lin Feng. Lin Feng was way too dangerous. In an instant, he killed 2 cultivators of the Xianqi layer. He was terrifying. Those who were accompanying Lin Feng were also surprised. At that moment, they were just starting to understand what Lin Feng meant before. He wanted them to delay the enemies and then he would come and kill them. "Thank you," said the cultivator who had almost been killed by Shui Shi a moment before. Lin Feng had arrived at the perfect moment to save his life. "We are in this together, it's normal," said Lin Feng. That person heavily nodded. They were fighting together and needed to support each other. "Leopard and I will fight against him. Kuang Shi, Tian Qing, you fight against those 4," said one of the Wanshou sect's members riding a ferocious beast while pointing at Lin Feng. Leopard and he were the strongest of them all. They had both broken through to the second Xianqi layer. They wanted to kill Lin Feng first while Kuang Shi and Tian Qing delayed Lin Feng's partners. For Kuang Shi and Tian Qing, delaying 4 cultivators of the Xianqi layer who weren't very strong wouldn't be a problem. "Alright. Indeed, let's do it that way. Ji Feng and Leopard, kill him, then we will kill the other 4 together," said the third one of the Wanshou sect while nodding. Lin Feng was too dangerous. They had to kill him first. There was no other choice. 2 cultivators of the second Xianqi layer and 2 Xian-level ferocious beasts should be enough to kill him. When Lin Feng and the others heard them, they narrowed their eyes. The 4 with Lin Feng looked particularly worried as well. The opponents, even though they had lost 2 of their fellow disciples to Lin Feng's sword, they were still standing tall and were convinced that their strength was still superior. They had many solutions to deal with Lin Feng and the others. They were using 2 cultivators of the second Xianqi layer and 2 Xian-level beasts to fight Lin Feng. They were making sure that Lin Feng had no escape. "You 4, be careful," said Lin Feng to the other 4, which stupefied them. Lin Feng wasn't worried about himself, instead he was worried about them. It seemed like Lin Feng hadn't used his entire strength yet and still had hidden cards in his sleeves. "You be careful too," said the 4 to Lin Feng. Shouted Ji Feng. Behind him suddenly a pair of black wings emerged. The 2 wings flickered and another hurricane emerged which moved towards the fire dragons in all 4 directions. In a flash, the fire dragons dispersed, which made Ji Feng smile, only for a second though, as immediately after, the dispersed fire of the fire dragons reformed and in a flash condensed back into the 4 dragons, and they were moving to attack again. These fire dragons couldn't be killed. Leopard and the 2 ferocious beasts were suffering from Lin Feng's attack and were unable to move in for the kill. "Retreat," said Ji Feng and immediately started moving back. He moved back and the 2 ferocious beasts moved back encircling Lin Feng once again. But Lin Feng didn't even look at them, his eyes were closed, the 4 fire dragons were revolving, burning around Lin Feng, their brightness was dazzling. Lin Feng remained motionless, he was controlling these 4 fire dragons and using them to fight against his 4 opponents. His soul power and his senses were extremely developed. Lin Feng could create 1,000 surplus souls and make them merge with the pure sun qi, then he could control the flames and form them into whatever he wished. Lin Feng just had to use his mind to control them. Leopard, continue, I will kill him, said Ji Feng while staring at Lin Feng. At that moment, he started running towards Lin Feng with unmatched power and speed. At that moment, Ji Feng had spread his large wings which started hovering in the air creating whirlwinds and pure qi started to gather around his body. Die! Shouted Ji Feng, who suddenly looked like a sharp shadow moving straight towards Lin Feng. A fire dragon roared and threw itself at Ji Feng, but Ji Feng ignored it, he just continued moving forwards. A monstrous pure qi tornado collided with the fire dragon. Ji Feng was in the middle of the pure qi tornado which was moving step by step closer to Lin Feng. Leopard was also furious, just like Ji Feng, he was also attacking Lin Feng at the same time, for cultivators of the Xian-Qi layer surprisingly couldn't kill Lin Feng, that was the worst humiliation they had ever suffered. Lin Feng was determined, the fire dragons continued to bombard the atmosphere towards Ji Feng and Leopard at full speed. Each flame contained only 1/4 of his pure sun qi, even though his surplus souls increased his strength, it was still difficult for him to defeat 2 cultivators of the second Xian-Qi layer. Ji Feng and Leopard were getting closer and closer to Lin Feng, besides, Lin Feng was also unceasingly increasing the power of his sun qi and his surplus souls. The 2 ferocious beasts were also unwilling to be outshone and quickly broke through while Lin Feng was in a difficult position, they both rushed towards Lin Feng to kill him. The battle wasn't only happened there, the other 6 people and 2 ferocious beasts were also locked in battle, it was so tense that nobody had noticed that some people were coming from the distance. In the air, there was a vast group of people walking through the clouds and moving towards them. The one leading the group was an old white-haired man, his facial expression looked profound and solemn and was filled with grievance. "The evil sword has disappeared," said the old white-haired man in a low voice. Where was the evil sword? They didn't know, but all they could see was that a well of pure qi had replaced it. "Father, look over there," said a middle-aged man next to the old man while pointing at Lin Feng and the others. The old man turned his head and noticed Lin Feng, dazzling lights started to glow in his eyes. "It's him, her son." It was his grandson. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.